Just to make sure I had it pressed right.
Good evening. Welcome to the June 20th Village Board meeting. This meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
Trustee Bazemore. Trustee Herrera. Trustee Codman.
Present.
Trustee Levin.
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
Present.
We'll begin tonight with a public hearing in the matter of Local Law 3, 2018, titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 62, Affordable Housing of the Village of Austin Code.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would just like to ask people that if you would like to speak on Local Law 3, there is a sign-up sheet. Is that up on the podium? If you are here to speak about the CDBG grant applications, please hold those comments until we finish hearing any comments about Local Law 3. Is there anything that staff would like to offer as we begin hearing comments on Local Law 3?
No, just I think at last time we had a 4-minute limit with
We do.
regard to each speaker, but other than that,
Or, yes. Thank you. All righty. Got a lot of hats today, Sylvester. Is it possible for us to move that sign-up sheet elsewhere so that we can have people sign up
leave it on one.
and while others are speaking?
There you go.
Thank you, Sheila.
And I think Sue was number 1 on the list.
All right. Well then, welcome. Sue Donnelly, if you're first on the list, please join us.
I am Sue Donnelly, 17 Susquehanna Road, here in the beautiful village of Ossining. Good evening, Mayor and Board. I would like to comment on Local Law Number 3 for 2018. Last week I wrote you regarding some confusion on the agenda. The Village Land Use Boards had been asked to save the date of June 13th for a discussion concerning this piece of legislation, as well as a discussion on Emergency Tenant Protection Act, ETPA. Instead, the community discussion on CDBG, which is Community Development Block grants, was scheduled and discussed. While this is also important, we believe it is critical to get the input from the planning and zoning boards on these two significant topics, while also leaving the public hearing open for as long as residents and public and property owners wish to speak to the board. As a professional courtesy to the volunteers who make up these boards, it is imperative that the meeting dates be scheduled well in advance, allowing us to adjust our schedules. We believe addressing the comprehensive plan and zoning must be a top priority of this board. There are sections of the code that must be addressed so any new developments fit within the overall vision for this community as demonstrated in an updated comprehensive plan. Without support from the zoning code, how is the ZBA to rule when this board gives incentives that are not outlined in our zoning code? Don't take it from me. One of the steps of the the housing study, in fact, step number 6, recommends that we must review the village's comprehensive plan and update our coding to ensure all levels of housing are built in Ossining. Esteemed organizations such as Patent for Progress, who are familiar with our community and our needs, has also recommended the following steps that we follow the steps of the housing study. There is a finite amount of land left for development, and we must proceed in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. These meetings must be open and transparent in order to ensure all stakeholders can have their opinions heard. Once this has happened, I am certain we can alleviate the fear I hear from many of our neighborhoods that their lifestyle may be adversely affected by these proposed changes. We know that an ongoing success of our community relies on thriving, diverse neighborhoods. But a discussion on this issue, such as we have, will have long-term impacts on Ossining families and businesses. And all potential outcomes must be patiently studied and considered. As our elected leaders, we have entrusted you to do the best for this entire community. It is imperative that each of you temper your individual passions and act on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donnelly.
Maureen Morgan.
Welcome.
I'm Maureen Morgan, living at 10 Ellis Place in Ossining, in the center of the village. Just want to add one other thing before I start my comments. I am a landlord, and I only have affordable apartments, just so you know. I have heard of no in-depth discussion on the ETPA as it would apply to Ossining, the negatives and the positives. If there had been some real research on this ill-conceived law, it would have turned up the unintended consequences of this sweeping proposal. First, consider the fact that the proposal does nothing to increase affordable housing. Isn't that what we're about here? In fact, with this one-size-fits-all proposal, affordable housing is likely to be reduced. Where can the members of this board point out where it is a success?
Ms. Morgan, I just want to pause for one moment. Are you referring to the proposed local law 3, which is an update to the affordable housing policy, which is a set-aside for affordable units and new construction, or are you referring to ETPA, which is rent stabilization? Okay, this is a public hearing specifically about local law 3. We are not discussing, this is not a public hearing on ETPA. ETPA is not an affordable housing program. It is a rent stabilization program from New York State. We are in the process of undertaking a vacancy study. When we have the results of the vacancy study, then we will know if we were eligible to enable ETPA. We expect that study to be done later this summer.
I was told that ETPA would be discussed today.
I'm sorry, but if you would, but I think you probably have valuable comments to share. If you're willing to stay till the end of the meeting, you can share them during visitor recognition. Thank you.
Karen DeTore.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Karen DeTore. I live at 5 Knollwood Drive in Ossining. I'm also the executive director of IFCA Housing Network, and I am a member of the town council. So I want to say that one of the most remarkable things being here tonight, being at the last meeting, and being at so many meetings that deal about housing in Ossining over the years, is that one thing is clear. We have a community that's really committed to preserving affordability, preserving diversity, one that's not afraid of making sure that people at all levels of the socioeconomic mix are housed safely and appropriately. And anyway, I might get extra seconds in here. So I'll try not to. But one of the things I want to say is that I worked very closely with Kevin Dworka when he initiated the needs assessment, and I really stand by the very, very, very thoughtful and comprehensive plan that he proposed. And while I'm very supportive of any measure that would bring increased access to affordability at greater levels of affordability, we have to make sure, in order to really be in this to win it and be in it for the long haul, we have to make sure that these measures are sustainable. And I think that one of the things that we need to focus on, and I'm asking the board because we're looking at this in the town as well, and even at IFCA, because we know affordable housing is not easy to sustain. There's a lot of barriers to creating affordable housing in a place as expensive as Westchester. So I really think that the first step of the stage of the housing needs assessment, the first step was really looking at your economic environment, looking at I think research needs to be done on the economic landscape, because affordable housing is going to require negotiation. It's going to require the dreaded pilots. It's going to require tax breaks. It's going to require all the things that are somewhat difficult to have. And when you don't know what your worth is, it's hard to have those negotiations. So I think if we're going to do this sustainably and make sure that we can negotiate the type of housing we want to see here at the affordability levels we want to see, we have to make sure that we have something that developers are going to want to take advantage of. So I really think that, again, sticking to the plan, which was laid out in, to my mind, a very strategic way, is critically important to going forward, and that doing things in isolation or in silos is not a good idea. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure what's going on with that timer, because it's still counting down. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Torrey.
Kaja Gam.
Right. Not being sure what's going on over there. When you begin speaking, I'll get you on a 4-minute timer on my phone here. I'm sure you'll be respectful of whatever the sound is that comes out of it.
Okay, hi. Kaya Gam, 55 Walden Road. I'm on the planning board here in the village. I'm a contractor and designer, also located in the village. So I have some insight to, I believe, to what this issue is. Jeff Gasparo, who's also one of my co-board members, wrote a very, very in-depth letter to the village board, and I'd like to paraphrase a few things from that. I don't think I can read the whole thing. It would take 8 minutes, and I don't have that. One of the things that is interesting about Jeff's background is that he's a lawyer, and he's a land use lawyer who did a lot of studies while he was studying at Page School and worked at the Land Use Center, Land Use Law Center. And he did a lot on municipal affordable housing ordinances. So I take what he says with a lot of credibility. Excuse me. We are all, I believe, on the planning board in support of qualified affordable housing. And we actually do believe that the 80-60 AMI is really interesting and very important to look at. What we strongly urge, though, is to not make these changes piecemeal, that we really base it on knowledge we have, on studies that have been made. There was a study done at the Furman Center in New York City, which is a national leader in affordable housing policy, and they write that the risk of adopting a new mandatory inclusionary housing policy will disrupt housing development if it's lessened to a policy adoption that does not take into account that there are the current actuals in the, I'm sorry.
Don't keep going.
Okay, sure,
That's
sure.
not relevant. Don't know what's going on.
When the policy applies and it neither sees affordable units nor market rate units, it potentially exacerbate an overall housing shortage and resulting in affordability problems. With that, they say that if you are putting up a percentage that's too high, you will get nothing. I'd like to take an example that I think might be very potent in this context. Bedford, Village of Bedford. They did a beautiful policy thing saying 20%, but I'd like to see how much affordable housing they've actually provided since that. One of the things that we see, and I think that Jeff is stressing very much, is that we do want to see it happen. We do not want to put a law in place that will discourage developers from coming because they can't make ends meet. They cannot make the budgets work. What is affordable here is not necessarily the same that's affordable in Bedford, in Chappaqua, in Briarcliff Manor, or in Scarsdale. We have to see at what they can call market rate here versus those communities, and what the difference is between what we call market rate and what we call affordability. That's the difference in margin that these developers have to deal with. The second point is that we have ways where we don't have to be in the pocket of developers and their whims or their market situation. We have land. The village has a ton of land. We have grants possible through HUD, through state and federal government money that can be used, that we don't have to use and depend on developers alone. Development corporations, which are private, public contribution units can access this money, can develop the land, and can do it with money that we otherwise would not be able to get our hands on. I think the strategy is to take
Thank you.
Dworka's recommendations, go through the process that
Thank you, Ms. Gann.
that it did. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
That was a very delicate alarm, so we're going to have we're back to,
John Van Steen.
Kaya, if you wanted to provide written comments to the clerk, she can add them to the record.
Good evening. My name is John Van Steen. I reside at 78 South Highland Avenue.
Welcome.
Many thanks for last week's examination of the Community Development Block Program and for placing such a high priority in our community, and to address it in detail, thoroughly reviewing the issues, answering questions, and providing evidence on the benefits to the community of the program and how Ossining may benefit from it. We support the conclusions drawn at that meeting and urge that you follow through on it when it comes before you later this evening. However, it should be noted that when the concept of a community development block grant meeting at the library was originally discussed, it was to be a joint meeting of the village board and its land use boards, the planning board and the zoning board, to carry on an open discussion, dialogue, and examination of proposed local law 3. Last week's meeting interrupted that examination process, and we're asking when that will continue. After all, we still have many open questions from the planning and zoning boards. What hard data do you have to support a 20% set-aside? That's a fast 4 minutes.
That was 1 minute. We don't know what's going on with the alarm there. Keep going.
Way more.
What data do you have to support that the current 10% set-aside is inadequate? While not opposed to the proposed revisions, how will these changes actually benefit those in search of affordable housing? What impediments will they create? What will the benefits of the community be as a whole? What will be the impact on development and developers? How successful has affordable housing been in Ossining since it was passed a few years back? Is this more appropriate as part of a comprehensive plan review? What proactive ways do we have of addressing the issue that are not covered by this legislation, and have you entertained any of them? If so, which ones were at your conclusions? What skin does the village have in the game? Has a public-private partnership been considered to address this issue? Should we deal with affordable housing and at the same time work to rehabilitate the existing housing stock? What data do you have to show that the current affordable housing regimen is helping rather than hurting? And of course, the zoning board has asked you, how does this proposed law affect projects already in the pipeline? What incentives would be exchanged for the proposal set-asides, and what would happen to it if it caused development to fall from the outside regulations? How can this be done outside of an updated comprehensive plan or without an overall development plan, as was suggested by Kevin Dworka? Now, these are things that have all been asked of you by your planning board, have all been asked of you by your zoning boards, and we understand also that the director of the Westchester County Planning Department has comments on this to add as well. We would like these shared with the community so that we understand what works and what doesn't, and so that Ossining can go on a path of using intelligent design rather than having bells like that go off. Okay. So, to date, none of these questions have been answered. Additional questions and analysis to assist in the decision-making process are available through the County Planning Department. And what are your plans on this process to have these consultations with your boards, with the county, and with the community? Note, at a previous meeting, you were exoriated in the process that you appeared to undertake one of expediency rather than good government. And how will the public be assured that you will follow the process of good and thorough examination? These and other questions should be asked and answered before a determination is realized. And so, again, we ask that you table Local Law 3 until you have done your proper due diligence and reported back to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Van Steen.
Sheila Massengel.
Trustees and everyone else.
Welcome.
My name is Sheila Vereen Massengale, and I'm a member, leader of Community Voices Heard and a resident of Ossining. I will be reading a statement for Veronica Foreman Davis, who unfortunately couldn't be here. My name is Veronica Foreman Davis. I was born and raised in the village of Ossining, and my grown children currently live here as well. I moved away in 2002, but never left the area since I work and go to church here. When it was time for me to move back to Ossining, I looked for 4 years, and it was very difficult to find a place I could afford. I finally received a call from the Avalon stating that I had been accepted for an affordable one-bedroom unit. I accepted because they mentioned the word affordable. Well, what is affordable when you have to pay all your utilities and the rent is $1,506 per month? We also are charged extra for water, gas, electric, cable, and garage parking. By the end of the month, I pay close to $2,000 to cover my living expenses. After being in the Avalon 2 years now, I am in the process of looking for another home for myself because all I do is work and pay bills. I work 13 hours a day at 2 jobs, and I hope I will be able to retire one day. It's hard not being able to find anything affordable in order for me to stay in Ossining, which is my home. I am encouraged by the discussion of the new affordable housing policy, which will create more affordable units at lower rents than what is currently available. We also need to go further in order to pass the ETPA. I myself and the residents of Ossining are demanding and determined that we get this rent stabilization signed and sealed, and that we, the community, continue to work together and keep our village. This is our home, and we will not allow anyone or anybody to remove us. Respectfully, Veronica E. Foreman Davis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verna Massengale. And thank you to Ms. Foreman Davis as well.
And then now we have Kayla Venuti. Kayla Venuti.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kayla Venuti, and today I'm speaking on behalf of my friend Jaden Robinson, who couldn't be here today. And I think that the things you have to say deserve to be heard, so I'm going to read all of his things. Hi, my name is Jaden Robinson. I have lived in Ossining for 8 years now. I graduated Ossining High School last year in 2017, and I'm currently a student at Westchester Community College. My past organizational affiliations include Project Earthquake and many other volunteer activities throughout the community. My connection with the current issue of housing insecurity is that I live in one of the Eagle Rock apartment complexes that bombard their residents with high rent. It is only I and my father who live together in a 2-bedroom apartment. Even though I do not pay the bills, I witness and consider how taxing it is on my father to deal with such great increases in our lease in addition to other bills. Seeing this, I wanted to take action. I started attending early housing meetings in 2016 and eventually joined Community Voices Heard. As I started to attend more meetings, the introduction of the new affordable housing policy brought a light of hope. I believe this policy is significant because it will benefit a large population in Ossining, my father and I included, who suffered the reign of landlords increasing their cost of living. A policy like this could prevent us from being forced to leave the community we call home. Recently, a village resident who has been vocal against affordable housing policies like the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, or ETPA, created a Facebook group called White Ossining. I bring up this point because I do not believe this should be the standard we aspire to. It is not what makes Ossining special. This new affordable housing policy, as well as ETPA, are important steps because it will keep the people who give Ossining its culture, diversity, and distinction in our community. If the focus is just based upon making more money in Ossining, well, that's a shame. Without the people who bring their culture and presence into Ossining, Ossining will be nothing. And I was talking with my fellow CVH members today, and they were telling me that all housing in Ossining is unregulated. So I really think that something needs to be done and that we should listen to the residents of Ossining. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Venuti, and thank you to Mr. Robinson.
Tanya Subia.
Good evening, authorities of Ossining, everyone. My name is Tanya Subia. I'm resident of the village of Ossining for about 18 years now. It has been a blessing to be part of this community, not only as a resident, but also as a worker and volunteer. Just to mention some, I've been working, I used to work in the past in Open Door Family Medical Center, working with the community in different community outreach, volunteering at Presbyterian Church, serving food during the holidays, Hillside Food Pantry, delivering food to the people in need, and any other community events through my former workplace, Dolce International, here in Ossining. Ossining is a great place to live. Unfortunately, it has been a challenge, and I was homeless for a couple months on the past. I stayed in my workplace at that time. I stayed with friends until I was able to find a decent place to live. I was fortunate. I was able to move in a decent place called Avalon. A place I thought was okay, but there is no stability with the rent. Not enough 2 or 3 bedrooms apartment. And besides the higher rent, without counting the utilities. My parents are living with me. My father has a health issue, and we are confined in a small place, 1-bedroom apartment, 3 of us. We've been on a waiting list for over 2 years now in this place. I think there is a huge need of affordable housing in Ossining, not only for one person or couples, but for families. My situation is the same as thousands of families here in Ossining, and all we want is one simple thing: a decent place to live with our families and a stable rent. I'm speaking tonight in support of the proposed affordable housing ordinance that will increase the number of affordable units to get built in the village. While this is a great step into the right direction, on its own is not enough. This is why we also must enact the Emergency Tenant Protection Act as soon as possible, protecting over 1,000 families from drastic rent increases and unjust evictions. Thanks for this opportunity to share my testimony and continue praying for the good resolution and the good of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zubia.
Sister Jean Fallon.
Good evening,
Welcome.
and thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of affordable housing and beyond. My name is Sister Jean Fallon, and I'm a Maryknoll sister living in Ossining. The longer I live here, the more impressed I am with this village and town. I think Ossining as one place, as one community, which is its strength and its charm. In the present atmosphere in our country, diversity is both a relief, a promise that we will continue as one people of many races and cultures and religions and economic standing, citizens who live with concern for others, not just for themselves. This is a good place to look at affordable housing, which should be a priority for all. I do not know why this act has not been passed long ago, or why we have to stand here tonight and give witness to prioritizing people who need help in renting a space that is affordable to live within their financial limits. Especially in these times when the gap between income and the cost of living does not allow families to keep up. It is a phenomenon, though, that we seem to understand this when it refers to the upper end of the spectrum. We understand the difficulties of landlords. We can encourage those who still have a need for assistance of affordable housing, but have difficulty with empathizing with those who have to miss a meal or cut back on medication in order to pay their rent. Yet these are the people who should be at the top of the prioritized list of any affordable housing. No matter how hard they work, they are not able to keep up with the cost of living as it rises daily. Their salaries simply do not allow it. These people not only have a need, but according to the United Nations, they have a right to a safe and stable housing, the kind we would wish for ourselves. This is why we must set aside other considerations to promote and accept the ETPA, which would give a lift to over 1,000 people, persons who are our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister.
Michael Vipal? Oh, Spall.
Good evening. My name is Michael Spall. I live at One Hillside Terrace in Ossining.
Welcome.
Thank you. I was looking back today and I saw that it was a Journal News article back on November 15th of 2016. And I was struck by a quote from a Julia Salko, who is the Community Voices Heard, a not-for-profit group in Westchester County, obviously an advocate of affordable housing. And she said, and I believe also, that residents, both in the village of Ossining and within Westchester County that run grocery stores, work at them, nurses' aides, teachers' assistants, and bus drivers are struggling to make their rents in many cases. If you take 80% of the area mean income, that means you have to earn $69,000 for two people and $86,000 for a four-person household. So it seems to me that we have really two alternatives, and I see that the village board, and I applaud them for it, has proposed a village local law number 3-1, which would lower that amount to 20% of dwelling units aimed at individuals with 60% of the Westchester County mean income. However, echoing the thoughts of other people before me, I really believe this has got to be a process. We've got to really make sure that the planning board, the zoning board, even the Westchester County Planning Board are in on this issue and have a chance to discuss it. As a homeowner in Ossining for over 30 years, I believe that we need to look at the future development of Ossining and how this might affect property taxes for people like myself and other people that live in my neighborhood. And I also believe that we need to look at the cost and financial ramifications of the area. And somebody earlier had mentioned Bedford. Well, let's see how this local laws and local laws like it have affected local communities and see what effect it's had on them. I think we need to have a really good and thorough examination before enacting this law. But beyond all that, I think we need to balance that with the idea that maybe the village board, rather than enacting legislation like a local law, really needs to take a look at teaming up with other villages and towns in the county to get assistance for affordable housing. Affordable housing can work. The article I mentioned pointed out that in a community development called the Modern in Mount Vernon, 60% AMI units were built, and they've been very successful with tax-exempt mortgages in New York State and federal grants. The village board alone cannot solve these problems. All the towns, cities in New York State and the federal government must be involved. And the bottom line is that Ossining shouldn't shoulder all the burden of affordable housing. It should be shouldered by all the communities in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spall.
That's all I have, unless there's somebody else.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on Local Law 3? Welcome. I realize some folks may have arrived after we asked you to sign in, so that's fine. Yes, you may approach.
Hi, John Zeltzman, 17 Westview Avenue.
Welcome.
So once again, we find our community in an important, facing an important and somewhat contentious issue. This is an issue about the desirability of affordable housing for people of varying incomes in Ossining. It's unfortunate that it's contentious, and I don't think it has to be. Since the last time Ossining trustees debated a controversial issue, you've done a lot of good work. You've commissioned a citizens committee to plan and develop, to plan a development district, or to propose for the development district in the downtown. You've commissioned a housing needs assessment. You've hired a village manager. You've supported and partook in the process of an IFCA-led charrette. And you've witnessed the openings of many new businesses, among many other things. This work is covering many aspects of government's responsibilities expressed expressed one common idea, and that is to make a plan, approve that plan, and follow it in a rational sequence. We have elements of a strategy. These are good, but they're not yet a completed plan. An important missing component is an expressed vision and a statement of where we want to be in the future, where as a community we want to be. Without clear vision and strategy, we go astray. The village board is easily distracted and tends to tackle things out of sequence. Ossinings's village boards have for a long time taken complex ideas and tried to make decisions with insufficient regard to data, context, nor how the decision contributes or inhibits the realization of their overall vision. Ossinings's village board needs discipline and should be clear about their role, and that the paid professionals and appointed commissions and make decisions in sequence and based on objective evaluation. There are consequences to ignoring this approach. Creative solutions will never be exposed. Ossining has unique and very complex combination of ethos, diversity, and location that is begging for creativity. But wrangling all of this is very complex and very difficult and requires coming together rather than separating along special interests. It benefits from more input. There is no shortage of subject matter experts and creative minds in our midst. We can easily throw this easily throw this all away by making decisions without data, without context. Unintended consequences always find their way to surface after poor decisions are made, never before. I urge the trustees to step back on this matter, not necessarily to take it off the table, if it is the right solution for an identified problem. There are questions that need to be answered before making the laws about how housing should be made available and affordable. Questions about Ossinings's local economy, about its tax base, about work, about income, about opportunities for upward mobility, about overcrowded housing, about reinvestment in old housing stock, and more. It is more complex than targeting a rent amount or determining the number of affordable units any builder of housing must include in their project. Let us take the appropriate amount of time to explore the data, to understand the cause and scope of the problem. Let us be clear on what the end game is and state that clearly as a village-wide goal. Let us allow our professionals to bring forth the mechanisms that will accomplish your vision, our vision, and perhaps most important, let us be disciplined about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zeltzman. Anyone else who would like to comment on proposed local law 3? Corporation Counsel or Village Manager, would you like to comment before I open it to the board for next steps?
There are some aspects that I think the board will need to discuss. We have comments that we received from the Commissioner of Planning for Westchester County with regard to the proposed ordinance. As Ms. Gann related, we did receive a fairly detailed letter from Planning Board member Jeff Gasbarro with regard to a number of comments, and we received some very valuable comments from the folks both this week and last week. So I think those have to be taken into consideration by the board in determining what a final version of this ordinance would look like, plus whatever additional comments that, as obviously we received tonight, comments that we previously received from Planning Board and the Zoning Board as well. But I think utmost is to look at the comments that we did receive from the Planning Commissioner for the county, who did opine on a number of sections in the proposed ordinance. So that can be I would think at a future session where I think those things can be fleshed out, either one or potentially with either with land use boards or just with this board. But we can do that, and I think that's really where we would have to go next before we come up, because there are a number of questions that have been raised here, both in writing as well as verbally, that I think do need to be considered before we have ourselves a final version.
I have not discussed with any members of the board about whether to close this public hearing or leave it open, but I do want to follow up, and I'm sure others have comments, on your reference to having an additional discussion with the land use boards. In anticipation of this discussion, Stuart and I had looked at our calendar of upcoming meetings and agendas, including the upcoming holiday, and the meeting on the 11th that is planned to be in the library to focus on environmentalism, and the meeting at the end of the work session at the end of the month, which is focused on code enforcement. And so we looked at the land use calendars, and there is a zoning board meeting that has a
Zoning board on
light
July-
agenda.
July 10th.
And I don't know how many members of this board or the land use boards may be available on July 10th, but that would be a possibility, and those meetings are televised. And it would be an opportunity. I do want to just comment on one of the points that was raised by at least one person. Is it any further consideration by the village board and staff of consideration of any of the comments that we've received during these meetings from Norma Drummond from the county, from any of the planning board, the zoning board, any written comments that we've received? If we're taking those into consideration and they may affect any changes to local law 3, all of that would be shared with the public. So if we were doing it, whether we were doing it in a village board work session or if we were doing it at a land use work session, that would be televised and it would be available for the public, and those would be publicly held meetings. The reason to consider seeing if an alternative date would work for a land use board is so that we don't wait until August before we continue this discussion, because we've heard a lot in the last couple of months, and so we don't want to delay this any more than necessary. Who else would like to speak? Rika, you also, trustee Levin, you weren't able to be here 2 weeks ago, so.
Right, so I looked at it, I watched the whole thing, but I'd actually asked that it be explained. I actually have a lot of family out of this country, and so I needed to visit a family member who's quite ill, and I went away for about a week, so I apologize I was not here for the meeting in person, but I did see it all on video. I found it really interesting, so I wanted to comment about a few things which came up again today. There seems to be a lot of discussion about affordable housing as if there's contention about the need for affordable housing. It is my humble opinion that there is no contention, and it may be one of the few things this board is not contentious about, is the need for people to be able to afford to live here in Ossining, in Westchester County in general, which is, as we all know, one of the most expensive counties in the United States, and has been for as long as I've been alive, a long time. I don't think there is any ill intent on any member of the board towards whether affordable housing is important or not. That is why we commissioned an empirical study so that we step away from personal opinions and agendas and a whole lot of stuff that we were mired in, and deal with empirical studies from a person who has a stellar reputation across the board, as far as I can tell. Personally, I was a little hesitant. I found Kevin Dwarker to be a little bit more inclined in one direction than another. I wasn't quite sure about it, but I was thoroughly convinced after meeting him and seeing the kind of work he's done around the state and around the country and in other parts of the world, frankly. And everyone in the community was invited. Whether people show up or not is on them. Whether they were invited or not, I have a clear conscience that people were invited and included, and that more meetings were conducted. So the intent is, and understand affordable housing, so lots of the conversation about affordable housing, people's affordability, be very clear that I believe, and I can only speak for me, but it is my belief, that everyone on the board would like to come up with a solution that people can afford to live here. Having said that, for me, I represent everyone in this community. I don't target segments, I don't go after segments, I don't care about targeting different people, one against the other. That, to me, is where divisiveness begins. What I'm interested in is how people can all live in this community in the way that they want to, and how we pay for everyone to live in this community. Because the other thing that became clear to me from hearing the commentary is that there was some understanding that when one person doesn't pay, someone else does. And how you manage that, I do think, is a responsibility of the board. It is totally, as John Seltzman said, there are processes, there are solutions. I believe there are solutions. Someone today said, but I didn't see it in the video, that it is not just an Ossining issue, that Westchester and New York State and many communities around the country. So I was happy that that was brought in. I would like to hear more in public meetings, however, about things that are actually brought up in this law. Number one, there was discussion about parking. There was the percentages where I think John brought up, but others didn't. Is 20% the right amount? That's, for me as a board member, what I would like to hear about. Is it 15%, 18%? I mean, I don't know where the number came from. So I would like to get insight from people who might have knowledge about that. That was sort of broad brushed in the last meeting. Love to hear a little bit more from people who know things about it. And there's lots of questions about empirical studies. I personally haven't found very many. People commission studies, and university professors and consultants, people that are commissioned are not empirical studies that are done by universities, and they're not studies that we did. And the sequencing of Dwarka's events came up a number of times, I believe, in the video. I was impressed that people have seen it so many times, and I would like that focus as to the importance of that sequence and get input, because the public hearings are for us to get input. So I appreciate everybody that came last time. I so appreciate everybody that is here today. I do apologize for not being able to speak a little bit more last time, but thank God for technology. And I want to hear more regarding those specific topics. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Others who would like to comment?
I would like to continue to leave the hearing open going forward. I think we need to get more information. I think we need to have the meeting with the zoning and the zoning board and also the planning board. I think that their public comments will be helpful, and since they are the ones that sit with the current code and would be able to reflect on what this new law is. You know, I'll say this about Kevin Dwarka's study. You know, I think he did a fine job. I think that he laid out his own sequence of the way he felt things should go. But that's also his opinion. I happen to believe that there are other challenges that we have that we don't have the benefit of time. And I think for many people who are living on the edge, every month that goes by is another month where they're going to be concerned whether they're going to be able to stay in the place that they live. That's a real thing. And everybody needs to understand that. The other thing about Kevin Dwarka's study, and I discussed this with him, is that there was a great absence of a large portion of our population that did not participate in that study. That was very troubling to me. And I think he did as best as he could to engage those folks. But when you have people who are in those situations and they're working 2 jobs, they don't have time to come by in the middle of the day for a charrette or an evening or whatever, because they got to work. They got to make enough money to pay the rent. And those are real things. Those are very real things. And, you know, a lot of comments have been made about my somehow I would personally benefit by some of the things that have been talked about. And there are things on the internet that are quite disturbing to me. And they frankly assault my character, and I'm very disturbed by that. But it's the silly season. There's an election going on. And there's also a process that's happening here where we're trying to make a decision. I would like to believe that I would represent all of Ossining here. But I also believe that there are those that are not well represented. And I need to listen to those voices as well as the other voices. And I will continue to do that as long as I sit in this chair. So I would request that we extend the public hearing. Thank you.
Mr. Herrera or Basemore, do you have any comments on Local Law 3?
Yes, thank you. I would echo what Deputy Mayor Codman said. I would also like to keep the public hearing open. I think it's very important. It's great that we've had now 2 meetings where either through email or through phone calls and presently at meetings, people have come to express their concerns and questions. I think what I'm going to be doing in my capacity as a trustee with aid from our village manager's office and other departments, I think we could answer a couple of the questions as far as why we even had the 10% set aside in the first place. I think we have a lot of basic data that already shows the rent insecurity and housing insecurity, the percentage of homeowners and renters that are rent and mortgage burdened. All that information is available through the Westchester Children's Association, through the Westchester County Department of Planning. A lot of that. So if I had to step back a little for a week or two to kind of compile that, I don't think we have 2017 numbers yet. But even if we can get our latest numbers to get some data and put it on a sheet, I'd be more than happy to do that. I do know that it's gonna support why we even have 10% set aside and why we need a higher percentage. And I think that going down that road, I think will kind of give us some tangible tools, and also the ability to see where those sources actually came from. So I do plan on doing that. As far as a couple months ago, when we were talking about, at that point, it was about affordable housing, but it was also about the potential ETPA. I actually said on camera that I was accused of targeting populations and targeting people, and how, as a trustee, I should not be targeting anyone. Public policy works by targeting constituencies. That's why we passed a veterans tax law exemption on this board that cost us over $2 million that I'm so happy to support. And it only benefits those people. That's why we have passed laws that help our small business community that only affects small business. The majority of our policies and laws and regulations and ordinances target a specific population. And that's how laws are. Not every law covers everyone, because you don't fall into that at times. So I don't think it's that we're doing it in a discriminatory fashion. We are, as trustees and elected officials, we are seeing a need, experiencing a need, listening to constituencies regardless of where you are on the spectrum as far as opinion, understanding, philosophy, politics. But this entire board, the past couple of months, the past couple of years, and if I have to, I could prove that the majority of what we've done is targeted groups when it comes to policies. And that's okay. Because all that we've done as a board is to better our community through those policies, whether it's for business, whether it's through the streamlining of a sidewalk cafe permit because it was too redundant, whether it is to help other businesses come into areas where they normally wouldn't be allowed to open or operate, whether it is to change our fire code or the abilities of a code inspector, or any policy change. I can go on, but I just want you to know any policy that we do has a purpose and targets something. As far as the land use boards, I'm happy that we're going to be meeting with them soon. That's kind of what it sounds like, Garrity, which is great. However, I do want to make sure that that we show the public, for our sake and for the members of the boards, what is the scope of all those boards? What is their role? What is not their role? What is my role? What is not my role? Because when we're listening to feedback, some of it may be personal feedback as a constituent. Some of it may be personal feedback politically. And that's more appropriate for a town hall meeting or a public comment section. So, differentiating, what appropriate questions we could answer as far as, input when it comes to policy and land use boards. Why they were created, why they operate, why this board operates, who is ultimately responsible when a law is created. Does it fall on the board? Does it fall on land use boards? I mean, all that has to be discussed, and it's very important. I did mention a couple weeks ago that I wanted an interpreter here, because over 53% of the village's population speaks a language other than English, and we're still operating as if that is not so. So that's a major problem. We're a progressive community and progressive board. We just don't communicate with the majority of our population for them to actually understand it. That's a problem, right? So I kind of look forward to working with the board and also proposing a language access law to go into what it means to operate in a community that has so many languages, and kind of working off of the New York State language access law that goes into the interpretation of information, any area of the village that has customer service, having translators, having interpreters, and as of right now, back to Deputy Mayor Codman's point, we're not reaching everyone. I know that I, as a trustee, as a candidate, as a personal person walking around, you could just tell by the amount of people that are just doing life or just going by that just don't know. And we have to find out better ways to reach those people. And unfortunately, it's very, very easy for myself as a trustee, for myself as a person who's in all these different community groups to be stuck in a silo. And because all your friends know to go to the same coffee house, to go to the same restaurant, to go to the same, you assume everyone else knows. And that is not correct. If you look at who's involved in our community, it's the same 75 people over and over and over again, right? That impacts access. That affects the information that we're receiving. That affects the policy that is being proposed or questioned, right? So, and I'm putting myself in this with you, by the way, okay? So I look forward to keeping this open and keeping the dialogue open and really seeing what are the true impediments that we're facing on how we operate when we even determine policy that's going to affect the majority of our village. Thank you.
Mr. Bazemore.
So I want to thank everyone for coming out. There were definitely a lot of good, poignant comments. I'm reflecting on the idea of, what is the vision for Ossining? That is the crux. That is the foundation of many of the things that we have been talking about. Is who are we trying to be? I will be the first one to agree with the executive director, Mr. Torrey, about the affordability. Affordable housing is not easy. Doing affordable housing in itself, particularly the way that the housing market works now, sometimes the numbers won't make sense. To say that a minimum wage worker should, at $15 an hour, should be able to find a 2-bedroom, and that they should only pay $780 for that apartment because that's what they can afford. That's not easy. To wait on HUD to come down and provide all this funding when we have the person who's ahead of HUD who doesn't really support housing. All these things are not easy, right? Housing in itself, to talk about what Westchester County and what all of us can do together. All these things are not easy, and even thinking about New York State, each community is given home rule law, right? So we have 43 municipalities in Westchester. That means 43 planning boards, zoning boards, 43 councils have to come up with laws about how the community should look. So by all means, all these decisions that we have to make are not easy, right? And we're lucky to be here in New York State where we somewhat have a governor who has definitely increased the amount of funding for affordable housing. But it is important to understand, what do we want to look like, right? I think, we're talking about the amount of people that came out, and we always see that when we talk about certain issues, we get a nice draw of the community, right? And so I want to thank people for coming out because the way that we get people out is that we have to be in relationship. And I think as the board, whoever sits on this board, we have to continue to find ways of how to engage people, how to keep people coming back, how to talk about these real issues, right? These are real issues. People having a place to stay are real issues. I think that, of course, we should continue to have the public hearing. And I also think that there are certain things that we need to look at our codes, right? Because we can talk about studies. I mean, there's a Harvard study that says that the biggest impediment to affordable housing and housing in general is zoning. right? Like, what if we decided to put a apartment building on Ogden Road, right? You know, as people even talk about ETPA, and they say, well, why are you restricting market rates? Well, if you look at the Northeast and you know, the Northeast region of the country and even the West Coast, we have some of the most restricting zoning laws that you've ever seen. So these are huge conversations, yes, that we can handle at a comprehensive plan. But at the same time, there is a need, right? And what we have is we've had a policy that constantly we're getting the market rate. There's no doubt about it. But we need to make sure, I mean, at the bare minimum, that we provide a policy for regular people in Ossining. You know, for regular people, because there's no reason to work if you can't afford where you live. There's just no reason. I mean, we're not talking about home ownership. We're talking about a basic place to live that is safe, that is adequate. I like what someone said earlier. That is a human right. So again, I don't want people to think that, you know, your comments are falling on deaf ears. We definitely hear you. We understand that, you know, the taxes are high. We understand that we need to build a stronger base. But, you know, when we do have this conversation, we really need to really reconsider, particularly our comprehensive plan, our zoning. Because if we're going to constantly be committed to the character of the neighborhood, then this is why we need policies like this. And I will say, I do believe from what we're hearing is that people want to be included now. They don't, you know, there is a moment of urgency. So again, thank you for coming. Please continue to come to our meetings. I like it when people are here. It's easier to talk to people besides looking at the camera. And just spread the word, because continue to reach out to us at bot@villageofossining.org. You know, we all have some type of social media. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Did anybody else from staff want to comment? Okay, so I think there is a lot of agreement in this room and on this board that there's absolutely a need for a more progressive, affordable housing policy here in the Village of Ossining. What I'm also hearing from my colleagues on the board is there's an interest in keeping the public hearing open. And as I look at the calendar, our next legislative session would be happening on July 4th. It will not be happening on July 4th. Everyone enjoy your Independence Day holiday. So our next regularly scheduled legislative session would be July 18th. So we can consider a motion for keeping the public hearing open to the 18th. We could consider adding another meeting to the agenda if everybody's looked at their calendars. I have not looked at my calendar for the vacation week, and I have not spoken to staff to know if we want to squeeze one in another day that week. And I think something that we need to go back, and we can't necessarily commit to tonight, but we can all look at village board and staff and the land use boards that have expressed comments, is if we want to have a discussion at the July 10th ZBA meeting, and we've only very preliminarily looked at what the agenda is for that to see if that's a possibility. Right. The one thing that has to happen tonight is we have to make a motion to decide if we're going to keep the public hearing open, and if so, until what date?
I think it would be wise at this point to keep it open, you know, for the next, what we know is the next scheduled legislative meeting, which is July the 18th, because that way, if the board were to have a joint work session on the 10th, the 11th is already, we're at the library for another session. So I think the best would have the motion to keep it open until the 18th of July.
Motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, to recap, you're welcome to come back and join us on July 18th for another public hearing on proposed Local Law 3. At that time, we may have had another public discussion taking into account some of the comments that have already been provided in these public meetings, as well as in writing, as well as from the county commissioner, as well as from our land use boards. So it'll maybe even more interesting conversation on July 18th. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. There's no need to get up and leave, because next we're going to hear about the CDBG grant applications and have a public hearing on that. And I think after that we might want to take a break. Right now? We have another public hearing. Why don't we do the next public hearing and then we'll take a break? I was like, after I'm going to leave? Okay. People, all right. Nobody wants to comment on the CDBG hearing, then we'll take our break now. Brief recess. To our second public hearing of the evening, more than an hour into the evening. Thank you, everyone who commented during the public hearing for Local Law 3. We'll look forward to more comments next month. Meanwhile, we're moving on to the public hearing, which is a follow-up to last week's work session, where we hosted at the library a number of entities in Ossining who are going to be applying for community development block grants. This is the second part of the public outreach and gathering public input and sharing proposed grant applications. And in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Village Manager Debbie McDonald. Meanwhile, anybody who would like to comment during the public hearing of this after Debbie presents a somewhat abbreviated version of last week's presentation, please sign up. I see we have one person signing up already. There is a sign-up sheet for comments here at the podium. All right. Take it away, Debbie. Yep. Mom's ready.
I was going to yell really loud, but this is good. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I agree with Quantel. It's nicer to talk to faces and people that are responding to you. So I'm here today to talk about the Community Development Block Grant Program. This is actually not the proper name for it. It's not New York State. It's actually the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development CDBG program. Those funds pass through to the state, and we are now members of the Westchester County Community Consortium. So I believe that the Village of Ossining has been a member of that consortium for many years. But for the last 3 years, we have not been able to access funding, so we are now able to do so again. And we are looking for the opportunities that we can capitalize on some of those funds to help advance and make our community better. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about the national objectives, what low moderate income means to our community, how we would use the funds, what are eligible activities, what are not eligible activities. We'll talk a little bit about the Westchester County priorities, our application process, and we will have an opportunity for all of you to engage in a citizen discussion. We're looking for your feedback on what our ideas are, because if we are missing something, we really want to know what that is. So we ask that you share your ideas with us. So what is a Community Development Block Grant Program? It is a federal grant program from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, but their goal is to develop and strengthen our communities through the funding that they provide to us. Their national objectives are to benefit low and moderate income persons. There's also a benefit of elimination and the prevention of slums or blight, and to meet an urgent need that is of a recent origin. Recent origin means something happened within the last 18 months. Westchester County is looking for fair and affordable housing. So we've been talking about that tonight, and they have programs to help us with that. They are looking for infrastructure improvements. We know that our infrastructure was put in many years ago, and it's starting to fail. And what we don't see is that all that infrastructure is underground. And so we know the condition of it, and they are have a program to help us make that better. And there are opportunities for youth. So there are folks that will look for programs where we can be helping our young people in our community. So what is low and moderate income? How is that defined? A non-low moderate income person is someone who makes 81% or more of the average median income for our county. When I presented this at the library, we had different income numbers. Those numbers have now been updated for Westchester County, and so these numbers here reflect those new amounts. The average median income in Westchester is $117,100 for a family of 4. So to be classified as low to moderate income, you would earn somewhere between 51 and 80% of the median income. And roughly that's somewhere between $59,000 and $93,000, almost $94,000. A very low income family would be 31 to 50%, and that is somewhere in the $36,000 to $58,000 range. Again, remember, this is a family of 4. An extremely low income family would make less than 30% of the average median income, and we've calculated that at about $35,000. So what if you are not a family of 4? Then those, this is going to be on our website, but this is an opportunity for you to go and look at the number of persons in your family and where you fall as far as your income to determine which level of income you are at and whether or not you would qualify for benefits. So if you are not a family of 4, then there is a percentage of that income that changes. So for example, if 100% is a family of 4 and you are a family of 3, you get 90% of that, or you're credited with 90%. If you're a family of 5, then you get 108% of the value that we've calculated. So depending on your family size, you may get more, the income qualification may be higher or lower. How do we use the funds? 51% of the people that benefit from the funding have to qualify as low to moderate income. So they have to be below that 80% of average median income for the county. 70% of all the money received by an agency has to be spent on LMI families. And there are 4 ways that we can benefit our families here. There's an area benefit, so we could do a project that encompasses a benefit for everyone. We can do a limited clientele benefit, so it's targeted towards just very specific people. There can be a housing benefit, so that is money that's put into improving your housing conditions, or job creation and retention. So there is also an opportunity to provide incentives to businesses for hiring low to moderate income families in our community. There is a laundry list of things that we can use the money for. Public facilities, acquisition of real property, there's many of them here. The ones that we as a village are looking to do is infrastructure improvements, sidewalks, curbs that are in bad shape, and also some code enforcement. And then we are looking for historic preservations and I thought I had starred them, but I guess I didn't. So let me get into the projects for you. What's ineligible, we cannot use them for government operations, and we cannot use them for any building that is operated for government purposes. We cannot use them for political activities. We cannot buy equipment. We cannot use it for operation and maintenance of government facilities, and we cannot do income payments to families. The application process for Westchester County is going to be a 3-year process, so we are applying for grants to be funded in years 2019, 2020, and 2021. We are afforded an opportunity to apply for 4 different grants, but they would be funded in one of these 3 years if they are accepted by the county. The citizen participation plan that we have is we want to provide you access to the information, so we will put this on our website. I understand right now that it is located with the meeting agenda, but we will find a place on our website so that when you Google it, you can go right to this and get it. If there is a group of people that aren't sure that they understand it, we provide technical assistance so that we can help people understand how this money is going to be spent. If you are non-English speaking, we also provide some assistance to help you, again, understand the opportunity that is here and how we can use this funding. We are doing a public hearing, which we're doing today. We did a public information meeting at the last work session. And we are organizing these citizen participations in areas that will also be accessible to our handicapped individuals. The Organized Citizen Participation Center will be given to our representative for the Community Development Advisory Group, which is one member from every community in the consortium that gets together and looks at how the money is going to be allocated throughout the entire county. So our first project is a combination of sidewalk money and code enforcement officer money. There is so much work that has to be done in this community, and so the village government typically asks for $150,000 in the budget to repair sidewalks. Well, if any of you have ever done a concrete project, $150,000 does not go very far when you're looking at a sidewalk replacement. These are 50-50 matching grants, so we're asking for $150,000 to match that sidewalk program that we already have. We are also asking for $100,000 as a total project, $50,000 from the village and $50,000 from Community Development Block Grant to help us fund a code enforcement officer that can operate in low and moderate income neighborhoods and address some of the issues and some of the housing conditions that people now have to deal with in their own lives. We are going to be asking for this in 2 different grants because we think the program is important enough to continue it not just for 1 year, but for 2. So you'll see Proposal 1 and Proposal 2, and I think you'll see that when the resolutions come up before the board for consideration. Our next proposal, and this should really say Proposal 3, so I apologize for that error, is upgrades to our community center. We are partnering with the town of Ossining who want to improve the senior program that they provide in this center, and we thought it was a great opportunity for us to apply for a similar amount of money to upgrade some of the facilities there. We have an alarm system that needs to be upgraded. We have pool resurfacing that's coming up, pool lighting. We have lighting throughout the whole building, and we're just looking for general improvements. But we are looking at a pretty substantial project to do all the work that has to be done at the community center. So we are asking for $250,000 from the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is the maximum that you can ask for to go into that project. Proposal 4 is actually the connector between James Street and Hunter. I walked it to take pictures, and it's really pretty hazardous. And it collects garbage, it's overgrown, there's quite a few rocks that have come up in the walkway, there's no handrails, and it's very, very steep. This is used by quite a few people from the neighborhoods down on Hunter to actually get to Main Street and Uptown, and also the people living on James Street and in the upper neighborhoods to get down to the train station. And so I've had the opportunity to talk to some people that have actually were walking while I was down there, and they said it's frequently a place that they travel. So this is actually what we call a paper road. It's James Street ends, and then it would, if you would imagine, continue down the hill and then end at Hunter, but because of the steep hill, you can't make a road there. So it's a paper road, but we really are looking to put a handicap accessible ramp with some lighting and open that up so that it's a safe, walkable linkage between those 2 neighborhoods. So at this time, I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to come up and comment on the 3 projects, or really 4, but so.
So if I may, before we take comments, I just want to clarify. It is 4 projects. The first one, as Debbie was explaining, proposals 1 and 2 are identical, except that one of them is year 1 and the other is year 2. They're both involving sidewalks and code enforcement. So then it's actually 3 and 4. So it is 4 distinct projects. The first 2 are identical, but in successive years. And then the former middle school math teacher in me just has to say this one little tiny distinction in language. It's the AMI's area median income, referring to the area of Westchester, because average and median are actually different mathematical terms. So I just have to say that. Average actually is mean, and median is right in the middle. So, okay. With that, are there any public comments? Welcome.
Manuel Quesada, 242 Spring Street. Sorry I missed it last week. I did watch it, and thank you for the brief sort of introduction of this. So I have 2 comments and 2 different of the proposals, I guess. For the code enforcement, the sidewalks I understand, and I don't think anyone has any questions in regards to that. Code enforcement I do, since that we're asking $150,000 for this, how is that going to move forward in regards to the budget moving forward? And what is that code enforcement entail? Does it mean that the village is thinking of hiring an additional person? And what does that mean going forward? Because if we, let's say we are lucky enough and we get this grant money, what does that mean for our budget moving forward? So that's one question. Second question is, you know, I do walk James and Hunter a lot myself, because I used to travel that for the train station, and I like to walk my neighborhood and the village as well. So one of the things that I remember of being part of the village board sometime last year, one of the discussions that we had was a developer had some steps. Part of the agreement that the village had with this particular developer was 2 of the items that, one of them, the village already paid for, which is the relining of the water, or the main water line on Hunter, which was about $100,000 to $150,000, if that's my recollection. So that money that a developer was supposed to pay for, the village already paid. So that one of the other pieces of the puzzle that it was an agreement, again, with this developer, was for him to pay for this pad. So in that same vein, I guess, I want to bring up that, you know, it was a contingency of him getting a building permit, which he sort of doesn't have one right now. But he did apply for a foundation permit, which is not part of these discussions, which I'm going to stay until the end of the meeting. Well, I asked those questions. So what does that mean for the village? What does that entail? Because a developer is supposed to be paying for something that we are asking for that money. So if that's the case, what happens if this developer gets a building permit at some point? So does now that part was a contingency of a site plan approval, which will not be part of his approvals anymore. Does he have to go back to that point? So it's like, again, so what does that mean for this grant? And what does that mean for the taxpayers? And what does that mean for the whole project itself? So I'm not sure if you will answer, but that's something that I would like to, at some point, get an understanding. So
Mr. Quesada, thank you very much. I believe we neglected to set the shot clock. We did? It was under 4 minutes? I can't see it.
He's got 1 minute and 3 left.
Oh, really? Wow, 4 minutes is a long time. Go ahead. Did you have another minute of comments there, Mr. Quesada? Well, no, if you have comments on CDBG, then now would be the time. You still have 1 minute and 3 seconds left, I understand.
No, I think this is great. I mean, it's about time that actually we are able to bring back some of the funds that we've been losing for so many years. And so thank you for applying this, and I know that all the groups are still here. Thank you for doing this. I think it's great. I hope we get every single dime that the county owes and federal government owes us. So and hopefully the state, we get some school money as well. So let's just keep getting money for our taxpayers and hopefully reduce our taxes at the same time. So thank you.
Thank you. It has been a number of years that we have not had the opportunity. I think it's way more than 3 years. I think it may have been 2009. Can somebody correct me? The last time we got CDBG funds, something around that. Do you want to comment now, or do you want to hear all the CDBG comments?
I don't mind commenting each time. So thank you, Mr. Casado, for those great questions. I would like to address the budget. We are capped at $250,000 for each grant. The reason that we chose $150,000 for sidewalks is because that's exactly what we budget for now. So rather than a $150,000 project, we could get a $300,000 project. When we looked at code enforcement, we are beginning to analyze the amount of enforcement that is necessary. So we only put $100,000 in there, which would mean $50,000 from the CDBG grant and $50,000 for us to try to hire someone in the summer that could help out with the excessive amount of activity that goes on in the summer. So not really a full-time person, not all year long, but just additional summertime help because of the amount of work that's done. And we felt that if we did 2 applications, then we could get $600,000 worth of sidewalk work done, assuming that we're awarded everything we've asked for. And then we could get $200,000. So we would spread that part-timer over several years in order to get some just additional summertime work. The second, yes.
So literally, it will be just for the summertime that you're
Yes.
looking to get an additional code enforcement or help in the office of the building department?
Code enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Your second question was regarding the interconnect and the responsibility or a previous agreement that was made with a developer to improve that. We are not sure where that developer is in the development process, but we have become keenly aware of the liability issue that we have with this walkway. So we are planning that out for the 3rd year, not the 1st year, and that gives us an opportunity to work with that developer. If we're afforded that money, then the developer would make up the other half of that. But it's just money that we needed to sort of plan ahead because it's a project we really need to do.
Thank you. And I think that's part of, again, if my recollection, it's not been a while, but it was the whole project for that particular walk is about $200,000 or $250,000. So what we asking is the full amount. So that's something that we have to look at.
Yes, we are asking for 250, and the reason is because the plan that was submitted by the developer for that walkway does not provide 2 methods of traversing that hill. So we wanted it to be handicap accessible, which would require cutbacks. We wanted to put in lighting, we wanted to clear out the vegetation that was there so that it was open and visible and accessible. But we also thought it was important to think about putting in a set of stairs so that if you are able to traverse the stairs and you want to run down them or run up them, that was an easier way to go. You're welcome. Any other questions from the audience? Please?
Is there a list?
Yeah, did folks sign up?
There was a list.
All right, whoever's next, then welcome.
Hello, I'm Jermaine Smith, 77 Stone Avenue here in Ossining.
Welcome.
I wanted to talk about the opportunity to have some youth development in Ossining and possibly using this grant to fund some of the opportunities to do a couple of things that we're working on here, and it's been really tough to try to get some support, as you know, and your role as acting superintendent of the for the recreation department. I've been having a little trouble trying to get some support in those areas. So I was trying to figure out if this is an avenue that we can go in and possibly look at for some of the activities that we're doing around youth development, community building, and a lot of it. And we're touching upon a lot of the stuff that this grant actually focuses on. So I wanted to see what the opportunities of doing that and applying for funding for either resources or facilities, and possibly in those different environments. Tamara and I also did a couple of things with youth expos here in the community, and we partner with the high school, and we're trying to expand that a little bit and trying to find opportunities to help the youth here in the community. So I wanted to see any feedback and whether or not this is something that can help facilitate that for us.
So that's also a great question. I do not know the answer to that because it's not a program that I've ever participated in. However, we will get you the information first thing in the morning and connect you with the Westchester County Community Development folks, and you can talk to them about your ideas to see if it will match up with their grants. I will tell you that you should do that right away because the grants are due not this Friday, but next Friday at the county office by 4 p.m. And you will need to present at a village board meeting or a town board meeting what your ideas are to fulfill your requirements for notifying the public. But I will get you that first thing in the morning.
Right, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Smith? Yeah.
Mr. Smith, I just want to get some clarity. Were you inquiring about how you would present a potential youth development outreach type program from yourself, or were you asking if what can the village do to reach out to more youth when it comes to these funds, or both?
Well, both. So I started an organization here. I'm alumni, graduate from Austin High School. I'm a resident here and bought a home here. I'm making noise here. Have 2 kids in the school district now, and I started a program because a lot of kids in the community could not afford a lot of the different development programs, whether or not it's sports or training or anything. So I started my own program, and my son was playing on a basketball team out of Briarcliff, and I was paying $800. We did the same thing for them here in Ossining for $250, and we actually gave them more games and things like that. So what we're trying to do is you're trying to give them the opportunity to go out and travel and play sports, but we also embedded some after-school programs and some academic. I work for Pace University, so we're trying to partner with the Pace University School of Education to bring tutors into the district, to have them work with the kids and do education programs here. And since they're potential educators who are in education programs, they almost would be like interns, so they need hours here. So we've had different programs. So it'll be a combination of both.
Okay, and you've done all that great events and programming because you haven't been able to do it with our village parks and recreation department successfully. That's why you did it independently.
Yeah,
okay.
It's been a combination of lacking in resources, and can't have access to the facility at certain times. So there's been a couple different. And I've been working again with the community center. I have a program through the community center. We do camps and clinics, and we're trying to do some training and stuff through the program, and we limited access to it. So it's trying to expand it and give more opportunities to more kids is what we're trying to do, and also bring in more of the academic component to it, because right now we do a lot of athletics because that's what we're able to do now. We don't have the facility to expand that. We have a lot of different opportunities that we can afford the students here, but we just have to have the resources to do that and access to facilities and things like that.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
No, it does. I guess I'm just contemplating. It sounds like it's more our role when it comes to youth development and programming, and I'm not so sure. I mean, everyone's welcome to apply for CDBG funding, but
well, there was a lacking the role in the village, so that's why.
Oh yeah, no. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I think it's our role to see how we could potentially change our 4 projects to include a youth development component, since obviously that's omitted, and you brought up a good point.
Right.
And you're just learning about how to apply for it now from us.
Yes.
Right. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
and I am personally familiar with your programs. I'm very pleased to see you here this evening. Is Project 105 a nonprofit organization itself?
Yes, it is. We have 501c3 through the AAU, which is a national organization.
So are all 501c3s eligible to apply?
Yes, they are.
So then I'm not an expert. I've attended a couple of meetings as far as what types of projects county is interested in funding. Ossining is a really good candidate to be able to access a lot of those funds. I'm sure you saw last week's meeting. It was the village, the town, but it's also the Ossining Children's Center and Open Door and IFCA are all local nonprofits that are applying directly themselves for their programs. And the community center is a big focus because we've got a community center grant application. The town has one specifically for kitchen upgrades because of their senior nutrition program. So they're looking, we want to do a lot of investment in the community center because, as you said, it's a wonderful, wonderful resource that we use a lot, and there's very high demand. There's a lot of wear and tear on it, and we need to be able to use it even more effectively.
I absolutely agree.
I think it might be worthwhile if people in village government who are more knowledgeable about this, maybe if you could call tomorrow and speak with someone, and I'm looking at you, Max. I don't know why I'm looking at you. It doesn't have to be you. It could be Debbie, it could be Jamie, but maybe to give you a little more information about what we learned from Norma Drummond and what we've learned through this process to help identify and see what you can perhaps put together in the next week. Is that a reasonable next step?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. We'll talk tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Early.
Mayority.
Yes.
So what I was suggesting was the possibility of us revising our 4 projects. So like whether either, I meet with him or Bill Garrison, our superintendent of parks, or I do it myself as a trustee, or, since we're getting more feedback now on potential projects, and youth development is something particularly 13 through 17 is really something that we're lacking in Ossining, even though we're all trying so hard to kind of fill that void. I kind of want to see what that process would be with the limited time frame that we have.
Whatever is the best path forward to be able to bring as much of this grant money in, to be able to cover the kinds of projects that I think we all believe are priorities is a good thing to figure out. So let's try and figure out what's the best path forward for success.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Bazemore, did you have another question for Mr. Smith or on this?
No. I'll make my comments later.
Okay.
I think.
There's a list. Who else is signed up on the list?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just basically want to say ditto because I believe that we need to get involved in the youth aspect part of the community. My question actually was, is there any program connected to the youth activities included in the rec upgrade? Is that part of the services that are going to be available besides addressing our senior community? Are there going to be upgrades like the computer usage, the activities that come in from outside into the community to address the kids? That was my concern too. So I'm kind of just piggybacking off of him. And the four aspects of the grants that you guys are asking for, you have 2 of them that are the same because you're trying to put it over. So is there any way that one can be combined and we can kind of use that as, toward the youth development?
Let me answer your first question first. What we are hoping to do with the community center is modify and upgrade our rooms so that we can provide additional programming for our families, youth, adult, it doesn't really matter. We think that there are some limitations. For example, the music room could be updated for a dance room, and there's just a lot of opportunities. The village board has actually discussed remodeling it and having the entrance down at where the pool entrance is and the gym entrance, so what is that going to do for us as far as expanding our ability to provide programming? We have looked at expanding the facility outside, but we know we have to fix the inside first, and that the public discussion that we want to have on what else do we need to provide to our families here through the community center, that's going to take several years. So that's the first one. So we will be looking at how we can improve the facility for more programming. And the second question about modifying the grant, we will absolutely look into that. I don't know if it's feasible, but I will definitely look into it because it's a great suggestion.
So I just want to make 2 other comments and then I'll leave you alone. My first comment is I know that the things in the community center, the rec center, need to be upgraded physically, like the infrastructure and all of that, but sometimes it's more about the programming that's available to the youth in the community, because sometimes, it's what they're doing as opposed to where they're doing it. And so for them to get that activity or that interaction or that engagement, that adds to the community more than putting new blinds into the room or putting down new tile. I'm just, like, I'd rather see more programming be available and affordable for the youth in the community, because then we go back to that affordable living, right, that everybody wants in the community, so I think that needs to be addressed. The other thing is that I'm on the, my brother's keeper board with the school district, and part of their grant, they have to partner with someone in the community to make those kind of activities available for the youth in the community. So if that's something that the rec could do through this grant and kind of like double the money for programming, that would be great. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Bridgewater.
All right, thanks.
Can I just comment to that? Yeah, because I'm so happy that you're on the Parks and Rec board. We are very excited to have a new Parks and Rec superintendent, Bill Garrison, who really loves children and is starting now. He's only been here a couple of months, and he's starting to realize how much the facility is used and how much opportunity that we actually have. And I believe his intention is to work with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to develop a long-range strategy that we can actually present to the board that says this is what we'd like in our parks, this is what we'd like out of our community center, and devise a way forward for how we can fund whatever changes are being recommended by our community. So I think it's perfect timing. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Going once? All right, I just want to close by saying that we are going to be applying for 4 applications. I will look into one of them being changed to a youth program. The program limit is $250,000 per grant. Our applications are due on June 29th at 4 p.m. at the county, and they have to be hand delivered, so we'll be doing that. The preliminary notification will be made in January of 19. So that is when we will find out what, if anything, that we are awarded. This does talk about our public hearing tonight. This will be the last public hearing prior to submission. So the program guidelines are online if you have further questions, or you can call my office and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you or any member of the public may have regarding this program. And I thank you all so much for coming and listening to our presentation on CDBG grants. Your Honor?
Does anybody else on the board want to comment on the CDBG public hearing?
I'll just echo some of the comments that were made, particularly as going forward. There has been some concerns about youth programming. You know that the Westchester County highlights youth opportunities, and I believe there was even some mention of workforce development. There's been a lot of conversations even about the Kevin Dorcas study, and that is something that was highlighted. So I just going forward, as the village should, just in general, do a better job as far as engaging our youth. And we should definitely use opportunities like CDBG money to do so. Thank you for kind of explaining code enforcement, because I know code enforcement can be a very touchy conversation, particularly in low and moderate incomes communities, right? Because as we start to, say that, there's a standard of living, we have seen in this area that there have been families that are, just because of the nature of housing and the nature of how people live, pushed out, literally told to leave their homes. So, it's a kind of tricky situation. That's something that, the village government, it's definitely the responsibility of the village government to make sure that there's adequate living situations, but let's be mindful that when we do have opportunities like this, to actually really be building the community or the focus group, just in general, like whether it be using money for acquisition of housing. You're placarding a house and people have to get out, that means that we have a lack of supply issue, right? And if we have this opportunity for grant money, we should be having youth opportunity or workforce development. I think we have some nice projects, but going forward, I would like to see a little more targeted approach about those general communities, because I just think code enforcement is something that that's just a responsibility of village government. general, particularly when we have these major issues with the lack of supply, the lack of affordability, and then the goal of actually setting a standard, placarding homes and people out. So it's just a little more focused approach. That's
Comments from anyone on the board on? Yes, please.
So I just want to let people know that I think the what I call the Parks and Recs Committee, it's not its official title. I actually think, Stuart, that they're still looking. The town, I think, is looking for somebody, right? The village is full?
I think the village
Village
is full, the town.
It's been great looking at it. One of the ongoing discussion with infrastructure is that so many people from all over this community use it. We have an increasing aging in place community, as is very typical of the whole Northeast, using community centers from both lifelong learning and for programming. The youth, which has been discussed already, young children, it's like the library in the school system, highly used, and there's interactions between those actually those organizations as well, the swim teams and all that. So sometimes fixing a pool, which is very expensive, goes from aquatics classes to youth programs to teams and all that. So I know that there's an interest in the committee. Jermaine, you've been there. That's how I met you. Not just for you, but for everybody listening to this, that if you have programming ideas, if you want to come to a meeting, please invite yourself. You simply have to call Marlene Cheatham or call the village manager. She'll direct you. And beginning September, they really do want to invite people from the community to the monthly meeting, and I'm the liaison to that, along with the town liaison. And really, one of the focuses to bring in as many people as possible at all ages, socioeconomic, and just make it the most used facility in the best of ways. It's actually a great, vibrant committee that really is very inviting, and I think you'd agree with that. Really trying to get some more programming in and improving. Did that program. I'm sure not everybody listened. It was very exciting to me. I'm not sure how exciting it's to everybody else, but we've been changing the computer system. From my point of view, another infrastructure that's absolutely necessary to get the word out to people about what's going on. It's been some really good stuff in the past couple of months. I appreciate it. Wanted to shout out there for Bill also. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that's been done in village staff. Thank you for everyone in the community who attended last week and attended this week. And I want to comment or sort of acknowledge some of the human resources and the point that was being made about programming versus facility and the need for both. And every time we have an opportunity to really make the most of a community resource, someone who is contributing their time in one way or another to do something they're incredibly passionate about, and to do something that furthers our big picture goals in a way that we don't have to hire a full-time employee to accomplish, is beneficial. It's a win-win for everybody. And so I second, third, or fourth, whatever we're up to now, the sentiment of wanting to create more opportunities for youth programming and wanting to incorporate the passion and skills of both of the folks who spoke tonight, as well as other community members who are really doing great things for youth and for community programming. So thank you. However this grant is useful or other grants are useful in furthering that, or however we're able to incorporate more of that now that we have a full-time rec superintendent again, with the upcoming schedules and programming, I would like to see that happen as well. So thank you for making sure that we're paying attention to that. If there was any question that we weren't at least listening, we are certainly listening tonight. Thank you. I also want to welcome, and I am so sorry, I do not pronounce your name correctly, so I can't remember it. Catherine, could you say it for me? Quispy. It's not that complicated. Catherine Quispy, thank you for being with us, and thank you for agreeing to be our Community Development Block Grant representative. As was referenced at the beginning in the presentation, every community that is participating in the Westchester Consortium has a community member who makes sure that we are hearing from the community, we are sharing all of this information accurately. She will review all of the grant applications when they are complete at the end of next week, I believe June 29th. He has to make sure that we've done our job properly. She will sign off on it, and then she will participate in at least 3 more meetings over the course of the year with representatives from all across the county to keep an eye on what's going on the program. So thank you very much for volunteering for that position. We're pleased to have you participating in village government in this way so much. Did you want to comment on anything? Thank you. And I'll just say thanks again to our staff who are working incredibly hard. It is grant season. We've been working on economic development grants. We have been working, obviously, on the CDBG grants that are due next week. And then 2 weeks later, we have the consolidated funding grant applications, which is a whole nother set of topics to discuss. And I know you're still figuring out exactly which of those are going to be the most viable options to bother pursuing. So the goal of all of these grants applications is to bring in funding to our village, where we are really going to make good use of it for the benefit of our community more broadly. And most of this money is coming from the state. Often it's coming from federal government, funneled by the state and the county or the region. And we are very fortunate to have staff, not just the folks in this room, but in so many of our departments, who are so ready to make good use of that grant money. And so we hope that everybody who's making the decisions about the grant money recognizes that we will make very good use of those funds. In most cases, those are matching grants. So there will be an outlay of village government, either capital projects funding that we may go out to bond for, or general funding from one of our, from the general fund or otherwise. So these are going to be projects that are not frivolous. They're not things that, gee, wouldn't that be nice? They're things that we know we need to do a better job at in our community. We need to further, we need to expand, because there is, they are all very well thought out projects that are necessary for us to continue functioning in the most optimal way in this village government. So thank you very much to everybody for your thoughtfulness in helping figure out which are going to be the most successful. And I know that we will continue to explore what are the best grant applications before we submit them at the end of next week. Do we need a motion to close this public hearing?
You do.
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments on this from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll move into mayor's and trustees' announcements.
Okay, it's already 9:30. Anybody have any comments or announcements? Deputy Mayor Codman.
Tomorrow is the day of the most light of the year. But it's also Make Music Day, and so we'll be making some music at the lodge. I know that Mike Risco is also doing a bunch of events all around the village, but tomorrow will be the Organ Groove at the Elks Lodge. We're going to be outside in the parking lot, so we're going to be take it outdoors. We've got nice weather, so that'll be fun. That'll start at 7 o'clock, but there'll be also other activities throughout the day. Where there's music everywhere, not just here in Ossining, but around Westchester, United States, around the world. It's really a great program, so chance to enjoy live music everywhere, anytime during the day. So, also on Saturday is the final show of Jazz at the Lodge. Ray Blue, a quartet, will be playing on Saturday night, starting at 7:30. He's a world-renowned saxophone player, and I encourage you to come by and check that out. That's at the Elks Lodge, 118 Croton Avenue. Thanks so much.
Further comments and announcements?
Yes, I have quite a few, so I'll be quick. So this is great news. It's been a community-wide effort. Congratulations to Galata House and the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society Ossining team for reaching their $50,000 goal tonight. So that was part of the Geo Strong campaign, and I know that many Ossining departments and staff and residents, and really it was a huge community effort that made this possible, so kudos to the entire team and congratulations. The St. Anne's Festival is being held every night this week. It's at 25 Eastern Avenue, 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. Fun for the whole family. Yesterday, I was able to go to the 2018 Westchester Eco Awards, and I'm very excited to say that Ossining was well represented as winners. Congratulations to Ossining Repair Cafe, Green Ossining, Eco Bags, and Ossining High School Intel students. So it was really fun to see us win a lot of those awards. And I'm going to finish off by just reading the statement in light of what's been going on at the national level and how it hits right here at home. I'm deeply troubled and heartbroken on the actions of our federal government who have been separating children from their parents and scattering them to facilities across the nation, including right here in Westchester. Regardless of the political climate, this is cruel and immoral. Children should not be used as a bargaining chip to force policy change, and asking for asylum is not a crime. There will be a rally entitled Families Belong Together next Saturday, June 30th at 1 p.m. outside of White Plains Federal Court. This county-wide event is being coordinated by the Westchester Community Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Trustee Herrera, and I'm going to pick up on that same theme. In recent days, the immigration enforcement tactics that are happening at the southern border have shocked and appalled many of us, and myself included. I'm the mother of 2 young sons, and the thought of having them ripped away from my arms, perhaps never to see them again, is almost too much to bear. We have heard statements expressing horror and shame from almost every living First Lady, former First Lady, regardless of political party. We have heard from governors across the country, across party lines, that are refusing to send National Guard troops to the border, and in some cases even recalling the National Guard troops back to their home state. These governors want no part of the inhumane border practices that have been called by Congressman Elijah Cummings child internment camps. In a village like Ossining, where immigrants play such a large role, vital to our community, these accounts are especially troubling. The village board has done its best to counter the federal administration's anti-immigration sentiment. A year ago, in the wake of fears felt deeply in our community in response to new immigration enforcement practices and divisive rhetoric, we passed a resolution affirming our values as an inclusive and welcoming community. That village resolution was translated into Spanish and is hanging in a frame in the Ossining Public Library. Last year, the village board also passed a resolution encouraging state legislators to allow all New York drivers, regardless of immigration status, to be licensed. New York State would not be blazing any trails if they did this. There are already 11 states, I believe, plus Washington, D.C., who have this ability. You may have seen recently in the news that Peekskill also passed a resolution similar to ours and other communities. You will be hearing more about a renewed effort to get Governor Cuomo to publicly support this legislation and for the New York State Senate to bring it to a vote. The Assembly is ready to make it happen already. I'm working with activists who are leading this effort, and I am optimistic that it may become a reality in the not-too-distant future. I was very grateful that Chief Sylvester offered his thoughtful consideration of what the impact of this legislation would be on his department's work here in Ossining. He provided helpful insights into how allowing New York State residents to be licensed regardless of immigration status would actually benefit local law enforcement. In recent days, we have been reminded of past human atrocities, both in this country and abroad. So the question for us now is, what will our legacy be? Will we allow children to be kept in cages and torn from the arms of their parents? Will we tolerate our president referring to immigrants as an infestation? Or will we demand better of our country? Will future generations view our flag as a symbol of hope and opportunity, or one of hatred and atrocity? I'm reminded of a conversation I had a couple of years ago with an Ossining resident. We were discussing complex challenges of code enforcement and how that can result in the most vulnerable folks in our community being displaced from their homes. Often these are undocumented residents who have fewer housing options. They may be afraid to demand safer conditions from their landlord. In an act of willful ignorance or profound blindness of privilege, he asked me, "Are those really the people you represent?" So let me state very clearly, I am a mayor that serves every person who lives in this village. If you are a village resident and you vote, yes, I am your mayor. If you are a village resident and you are eligible to vote, but you do not, still your mayor, and I ask that you please register and vote. If you are a resident of the village of Ossining and you are under the age of 18, I am also your mayor. If you live in the village and you are a documented resident who is not a U.S. citizen, or perhaps not yet a citizen, I am your mayor. And if you live in the village of Ossining and you are an undocumented resident, I am also your mayor. All of us are elected to serve on the village board, and we have an obligation and a responsibility to serve the needs and the interests of every person who lives in our village. I am grateful to work with so many leaders and volunteers, activists, and public servants who seek to support families that are contributing admirably to the success of Ossining. It's been a long night. We are a nation of immigrants. We are a village of immigrants. We are a community that cares for our neighbors and serves a vision for America that is born out of hope and opportunity. All that said, right now, I might settle for some simple human decency. And with all of these thoughts in mind, put on my documentary discussion series hat for a moment. It's not really a lighter topic, but it is back to our community calendar discussion. The next month's offering in July will be offered July 19th at the Ossining Public Library. As always, it is free to the public. The program begins at 6:30. The name of the film in English is Don't Tell Anyone, No Le Digas a Nadie, both in English and Spanish. The subject is immigration and sexual assault. It's a tough subject. Really good film. It'll be an interesting conversation. I hope you join us. That's July 19th at the Ossining Public Library. As always, you can learn more about it at the OssiningDocumentaries.org.
Administrative reports. Village Manager Deborah McDonald.
I have to follow that?
You can lighten it up.
I think I've talked enough tonight. I will be updating the board probably at the next work session to tell you all the different grant opportunities that I believe our community could be eligible for, and just to get some feedback from you. I don't have that list tonight, but I think it's a good discussion to make sure that all of you are supportive of the different opportunities that our team, and I will say that it's been a fabulous team who have been working together to find grant opportunities that we can utilize in our community. So there is more to come, and I hope that the community is supportive of the different grant opportunities that we've been asking for. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you.
Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
I will start on a lighter note.
Couldn't get heavier.
For those out there who are Harry Potter fans, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has announced that on August 10th it will be having an examination for an apprentice falconry license. So all of those of you out there who wish to have an apprentice falconry license, you only need to be 14 years of age or greater. You can get that. They're also giving tests for wildlife rehabilitator licenses or the leashed tracking dog handler. But the apprentice falconry license, that's one that's very impressive. And for those of you on the board who know my wife, this is something she would actually go out for. It would scare the heck out of me, but we'll do it anyway. On to some other topics from the DEC.
You know, though, that this area, the Hudson Valley, is a big falcon.
Well, as it says here, apprentices are limited to possessing one bird, either an American kestrel or a red-tailed hawk. And then they go into some other things here. But just if folks are interested, the exam is August 10th. The registration deadline is July the 20th. New York, the mayor had mentioned before about the licenses, and New York would not be a leader. But there is an area where New York actually is first, and that relates to something that's going to go into effect on July 1st, which is known as the Household Cleansing Product Information Disclosure Program. Anyone who sells cleaning products in the state of New York will be obligated to complete a form which will be online listing all of the chemicals, including fragrances, byproducts, trace quantities, etc., that are in that particular cleaning product. This is primarily for folks who may be suffering from asthma or other breathing disabilities. So if you have that kind of situation, the manufacturers will be required to disclose that, and you can get that information online from the DEC. And there will also be a toll-free number which will answer any questions that you have with regard to that. That goes into effect on July, in early July. Just so folks know, there is a planning board meeting this Tuesday, June the 26th at 7 p.m. at the Ossining Operations Center. There will be a public hearing or a continuation of a public hearing with regard to the Hidden Cove application. There will also be I think there's at least another 8 or 9 applications that are on that night. There is including one which involves a recommendation from our Environmental Advisory Council with regard to the local waterfront redevelopment program, which is something that they are obligated by code to do. So that will be something that will be presented to the planning board that night. If anyone is interested, the agenda is online. They're welcome to come there. As I said, the meeting will begin at 7 p.m. with the public hearing, and then we'll continue from there. Also, again, on July the 9th, there will be a public hearing conducted by the Historic Preservation Commission with regard to the application to designate Ellis Place as a historic district. And that application is online on the HPC's site or page on the village's website if anyone is interested in seeing it. Notification of that has been already mailed to all the property owners on Ellis, and it has been and will be published in the newspaper next week. But that again will be July the 9th. That's at 7 p.m. also at the Ossining Operations Center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. I'm going to start by commenting on a couple of resolutions that are before the board tonight. Resolution F seeks for a vehicle to be declared as surplus. That's going to be, although it is a 2017, that's going to be the result of an officer-involved collision, so that vehicle was deemed a total loss. So that's the purpose of a relatively new vehicle being placed on there. Resolution G is looking for permission for Ossining Matters to have their 5K. That's a long-standing event that we've had in our community. I'm in support of that, and we intend to have a pretty sizable team for the police department competing in that race. Resolution H is for a car show for Columbus Lodge. This show was slated to have gone off twice so far, and the weather hasn't cooperated, so they're going to roll the dice on this weekend again. We have no objection to that. It's been going on for years, and I'm glad to see that it's before the board to be formalized this time. Some stuff looking backwards. At our last board meeting, I had failed to mention this to the board, although I put it out on social media, that I've been selected to present at a workshop for the International Association of Chiefs of Police at their annual conference this October in Orlando. I'll be teaching social media from scratch, digital startups for smaller departments, so I'm really proud of that. It'll be an opportunity for us to share some of our success and things we've learned with departments from around the world. Over the last couple of weeks since we've met, we've graduated DARE classes at both St. Augustine School and Roosevelt School, so quite a few kids going through that. Really, I'd like to thank and acknowledge Detective Ed Walker and Officer Shelley Farrell. They put their heart and soul into this program, and they have for many years. You know, they really mean the world to a lot of these kids, and they're doing a great job of building relationships with our young people and connecting them with our police department. In line with all of our efforts to connect kids with cops, our Cops and Kids sports series had kicked off last week, just before the Village Fair. We had our first Cops and Kids kickball tournament, which included kickball and pizza and an appearance by Homer, who encourages kids to hit a home run against drugs. That's a new character for us, and that was a lot of fun. The Village Fair, we did our annual Dunk-A-Cop booth. We raised $1,500 for the SPCA of Westchester, which the PBA will be delivering to them shortly. And we're glad for all of the partnership we have with that organization. As we discussed last time, traffic enforcement is up. I don't have statistics since we are still mid-month at this point, but we did conduct our first neighborhood meeting with the residents of Pershing Avenue, 1st Avenue, 2nd Avenue, and that whole neighborhood, and we came up with a series of potential solutions which are being discussed now with engineering, the village manager, and Corporation Council. So we're looking forward to presenting something to the board at some point with that, but we are finding some engineering and legal hurdles to what appear to be some easy solutions. So a little bit more complicated than we expected, but we're going to find a way. We had our first Coffee with the Cop for 2018 at Deli Bagel Cafe. Last week, we graduated 2 officers, Officer Ryan Tompkins and Schwartzman, from the Yonkers Police Department Emergency Services Unit class. That is to put them on our SWAT team. That is an intense, I believe, 6-week school that they attended. That is essentially all of the stuff that when a cop needs help, that's who we call. Proud to announce that I've also joined the My Brother's Keeper initiative with the school district, seeking to fortify and expand programs supporting young men of color in our community. So that's an exciting program, and I look forward to having more to discuss with that as we come. Going forward, Friday is the last day of school, so I'd love to tell you about all the things we're going to do for traffic, but I'll stick to this. We have a surprise coming. It is not a block party, because I know every time we say surprise, everybody thinks it's a block party, but we have something coming. So I'll encourage everybody, whoever's still listening at this point in the night, to keep an eye on all of our social media stuff Friday afternoon when school lets out. The kids are going to get excited. We're going to get excited too, so we got something fun coming for the kids. Saturday morning, as long as we still have enough energy after our surprise from Friday, we'll have our next Coffee with the Cop at the Farmers Market. So we'll have a few officers there. You can meet and greet, have coffee and a snack with us, and get to know us. Following that, on Friday the 29th, we've got another Coffee with the Cop coming up at Briar's Bagels on North State Road. And then we'll be getting ready for, on July 3rd, which is before we meet again, fireworks coming up, so there'll be all sorts of information being released with that. And immediately following the holiday, we have our next Cops and Kids kickball game, which is going to be Nelson Park at 6 p.m. And I don't know what the food menu is for that yet, because we had pizza this time instead of hot dogs, but we'll fill everybody in as we go. And that is a full report for the police department in June of 2018. Thank you.
Thank you.
Organization announcements?
This would be an opportunity if you have an organization that has an event coming up, or you want us to let us know, anybody in the public to know, you have 2 minutes to share that event information with the public.
Village Board resolutions. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on any of the resolutions? No? So we'll move into our resolutions. Approval of minutes, May 30th, 2018. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the May 30th, 2018 special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
No, Trustee Herrera, you were not, that was the special
the one
meeting, I
that
think,
I-
that dealt
for my
with your...
permit?
Yes.
Abstain.
You have somebody else
You
to-
still need a second, right?
Yeah, I know, but I
Okay.
just wanted to point
Thank
that
you.
out.
I recuse myself from the vote. Not present.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter B, approval of the June 6th, 2018 minutes. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the June 6, 2018 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Anybody on the board comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All those in favor?
I think we ayed. Yeah, we all ayed. Yeah,
Okay.
besides.
All right. Letter C, approval of minutes, June 13th, 2018. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the June 13th, 2018 CDBG work session meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I didn't remember seeing them, actually, but that's okay.
I think there was something put out today.
Oh, all right. Did anybody else read them? Feel they were reflective of what heard? I'm going to trust they're good.
Got to vote, right?
Yeah.
Would, unless you want to hold off and... No, actually, this you have to vote on. I apologize. Thank you. I won't. Oh, she's going to...
I mean, it's the
Did
minutes,
it in-
right?
did
It's
it
the
include-
minutes from the meeting, right?
Yes.
Here, I have them if you want.
Would you mind? Because I didn't remember seeing them, Madam Clerk. And I don't think they could be very much other than identifying who spoke. Right? Oh. Angela. All right, I'll take a quick look. Oh, this is the entire, okay.
The entire presentation, and then,
All right. For the record, all the stuff I'm looking at, we actually saw on screens while we did it. I'm just making sure there's nothing, All right, this is the presentation from the other organizations. town adjourned to executive session, the village adjourned to executive, yep, looks good. I can vote. All those,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Letter D, approval of voucher detail dated June 20th, 2018. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated June 20th, 2018 in the amount of $1,076,077.19. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Yes, sir.
Yeah, a lot of capital activities on this one here. Most of it has to do with the Gordon Avenue water replacement. Probably, about north of $325,000. And then there's some other stuff for the water treatment plant, as well as, some consulting services for Hazen and Sawyer for the Indian Brook water treatment plant work. So that makes up close to $400,000 of the expenditure.
Thank you. Further comments? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter E, resolution authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement with CapturePoint.com for the Community Pass online registration and payment management software to be used by the Recreation and Parks Department as outlined in the April 25th, 2018 proposal. Resolved that upon review of the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with CapturePoint.com, 141 Dayton Street, Ridgewood, New Jersey, 07450 for the Community Pass online registration and payment management software as outlined in the April 25th, 2018 proposal, including price quote, agreement for services, Appendix A, Capture Point Services description, Appendix B, Capture Point support, and Appendix C, payment processing terms and conditions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Anybody want to comment on the board? You referenced this earlier, Trustee Levin. I didn't mean to catch you in a bad moment.
Okay, I need to take a little snack.
Understood.
Sorry about that. This is what was presented. I'm sorry? So that you couldn't hear my crunching, that's why I shut it off. I was just saying that Trustee Herrera actually said I'm really excited about this one as we were looking at it. It's great. I mean, it puts us into the 21st century as far as the computer, online information, registration, et cetera, product that we have for the community center. It allows us flexibility. It's a great work. I know Bill's only been there a couple of months. I just think it's also going to improve our ability for pricing and information. It's just all good. I'm glad it's being done quickly and inexpensively. The price isn't mentioned here. I'm sorry for interrupting. The price isn't mentioned, but go back to the meeting, but basically, it more than pays for itself. I hate to say it, but it's a no-brainer. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I'm glad that the board, the entire board,
Any other comments on this? Thanks. Yes, it saves the village money and it saves the user money. It significantly lowers the fees for those of us who would like to be able to register for programs online. So, and it is in multi-languages. So it's all around a lot of great reasons to do this. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution F, resolution declaring a vehicle as surplus equipment and authorizing the vehicle's disposal. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby declares the following vehicle as surplus equipment and authorizes the vehicle disposal in accordance with New York State law by the sale or otherwise as is. Year 2017, make Ford, model Explorer, style Police Interceptor, and VIN number. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
He referenced this in his opening remarks. It was in
I missed it, I'm sorry.
It was an officer-involved accident, responding to a call. First.
Any further comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution G, resolution approving the application of the Ossining Matters Education Foundations for a permit allowing a 5K race. Wherefore, application was reviewed from the Ossining Matters Education Foundation for a permit allowing a 5K race with start on the corner of Main Street and Spring Street and ends at the Ossining Recreation Center, map included below, Saturday, September 8, 2018, at 9 a.m. And wherefore pursuant to Village of Ossining Code Chapter 186, Section 186-3, the application was provided to the Village of Ossining Chief of Police, who is charged with an investigation, the application, and wherefore upon conclusion of the investigation, the Chief of Police recommended to the Board of Trustees that the application be approved and that the permit for the gathering be granted. Now therefore be it resolved that a permit is issued by the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees to the Ossining Matters Education Foundation to conduct a 5K race on Saturday, September 8th, 2018, starting at 9 a.m., beginning at the corner of Main and Spring Streets and concluding at the Ossining Rec Center. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I'll just say, if folks are surprised to see this on here, I don't think we have ever done a resolution for this or for the one coming up, which is the car show. This is an effort for the village to have more consistency in the board. The way we are understanding our code is that we are, at this point, the way the code is written, supposed to vote on any events like this that take place.
Public gathering permits require at this point, require a permit granted by the Board of Trustees.
We have had some discussion of perhaps changing the village code so that it could be done internally by staff if it's a routine project like this, but for now we're doing our best to provide some consistency in process, and that's why you're seeing more of these for parades and events of this. Any further comment? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter H, resolution approving the application by the Columbus Lodge for a permit allowing a car show. Wherefore, an application was received from the Columbus Lodge for a permit allowing a car show in the Ossining Train Station parking lot Saturday, June 24, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and wherefore pursuant to the Village of Ossining Code, Chapter 186, Section 186-3, the application was provided to the Village of Ossining Chief of Police, who was charged with investigating the application, and wherefore, upon conclusion of the investigation, the Chief of Police recommended to the Board of Trustees that the application be approved and that the permit for the gathering be granted. Now therefore be it resolved that a permit is issued by the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees to the Columbus Lodge allowing a car show on June 24, 2018, from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. at the Ossining Train Station parking lot. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution I, resolution authorizing the village manager of the Village of Ossining to submit an application for community development block grant funding for the Connection Initiative. Whereas the Village of Ossining is a member of the Westchester Urban County Consortium, and whereas as a member of the Westchester Urban County Consortium, the Village of Ossining is desirous of applying for community development block grants for the 2019-2021 fiscal years. And whereas the community development block grants are to benefit low and moderate income persons, and whereas the Village Board of Trustees hosted a special meeting on June 13, 2018 to announce the availability of community development block grant funding to identify potential applications, and whereas the Village Board of Trustees held a public hearing on June 20, 2018 to identify potential applications and to hear public comment, and whereas the Village Board of Trustees has identified 4 projects eligible for community development block grant funding that would benefit low to and moderate income persons, and whereas the Village Board of Trustees believes that these 4 proposed projects incorporate residents' concerns based on the public input received, and whereas one of the 4 proposed projects identified by the Village Board of Trustees is to fund the repair and reconstruction of the James and Hunter Street connection, herein referred to as the Connection Initiative, and whereas for proposed Connection Initiative specified above, the Village Board of Trustees pledges to match the funds amount requested, and whereas if proposed Connection Initiative specified above exceeds projected costs, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for the balance. And whereas if the CDBG funding is awarded for the proposed Connection Initiative specified above, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for managing and administration of the funds. And whereas initiative application for CDBG grant funding is being submitted for proposed proposed connection initiative specified above. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village manager to seek $250,000 in Community Development Block Grant funding in order to fund the proposed connection initiative specified above. And therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby endorses the CDBG grant application and authorizes the village manager to sign and submit all required application materials. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
On the board?
Yes. I just, Debbie, please don't kill me. So how do we, if we're going to be looking into the possible revision of our 4 submitted projects, do we not vote on this tonight? Because you just shared that we're going to look into that tomorrow. So like, I don't really know how to move forward.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would recommend that we pass the resolutions as written tonight, because we are meeting again next week. We could also meet in legislative session to make a change. That would be possible? Is that correct?
Yes, it is. But one of the requirements is that we have approved minutes. So if you're going to make an action at the next meeting, you wouldn't be able to approve the minutes because they wouldn't be available and we would miss the deadline. So let me respond to that concern that you have. So we have been asked by the county to provide 4 ideas for application. We will ask for 1 for year 2019, and the others are placeholders. Those others are the ones that can be modified. So if we choose to modify it, because we are so close to the deadline, I would ask that you reconsider and as recommended by Deputy Mayor, you pass what we have, because we can modify those. So if one of the joint applications for the code enforcement sidewalk wants to be turned into a youth programming, we can do that in the next year. I'm not sure that we're eligible for it,
Eligible for what?
the youth programming. And that's my concern.
Okay. Well,
So I want to look into it, and we have an opportunity to modify one of our applications, but I'm really not sure that we are eligible for that, and that would be my concern.
I feel like I have to. I mean, a lot of work has been put into this, but I just, I guess it's, and I guess I'm just kind of reacting to it now, even though this was sent to me ahead of time, and we had it this last week. So please, this is not on your office at all. I just, if we're having a hearing tonight for community input, and it didn't really matter what they just said, because we are submitting our projects. But with that being said, if there's a possibility to, as you said, to make a change to one of the other projects in other years.
Correct.
And I think that's great, so thank you.
Yes,
And
we can do that.
And I definitely want to learn how that works. Thank you.
Sure.
Did we move in second and then start talking?
Well, yeah.
We have to
Okay.
vote on it. We have to vote on that.
Okay, so yeah, thank you everybody for having that back and forth. And also, this is the first year in many years that we've had the access to the CDBG grants, and we weren't even sure exactly how this process was going to unfold. And we were very fortunate that Norma Drummond recognized that Ossining is an important community to be able to access these grants, so she did meet with Village Town and a few of the nonprofits to help us really understand how to be successful in our grant applications. And we pretty much moved forward as quickly as we could get things on the calendar to try and make this happen, and yet still, we're really up against it. So it was, it is a little frustrating to feel like we have to do this now, even though we just had a public hearing half an hour ago. So it is a little frustrating, and we're all learning exactly how this is going to work out, and I was a little surprised that we have to apply for all 3 potential years, and they will give their feedback, and Catherine will attend that meeting when they kind of explain it, Quisby, that even if we apply for something in 2019, they'll tell us in January 2019, but they'll still then at that point be confirming that we're really ready to go and it's really shovel ready. And then as the next project approaches that we have applied for 2020, they will again come back and say, is this really, how are you moving forward? Are you really ready to do this? So that well. The applications must be handed in by next week. The decision-making is still flexible moving forward. I don't know exactly how flexible. I guess we'll see, because it's, we haven't done this in quite some time. So thank you, everybody, for getting us to be able to take advantage of it, and it sounds like we have some agreement on the board that we're going to move forward with it as best we can. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Letter J, resolution authorizing the village manager of the Village of Ossining to submit the first of 2 applications for Community Development Block Grant funding for sidewalk improvements and code enforcement initiative. Whereas the Village of Ossining is a member of the Westchester Urban County Consortium, and whereas as a member of the Westchester Urban...
Madam Clerk, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to skip the first 7 paragraphs of each resolution if they're identical?
That would be up to Corporation Council.
I mean, really, the first 7 of each of these is truly identical, and then it gets a little varied.
Okay, go ahead.
The full text is available in print or online for anybody who'd like it, and we can send you a copy if you'd like to reread it.
Paragraph 8.
It's the top of the next page.
Whereas one of the 4 proposed projects identified by the Village Board of Trustees is to fund the reconstruction and repair of sidewalks, as well as to fund the payment of salaries and overhead costs directly related to the enforcement of local codes in low and moderate income areas, hereinafter referred to as the first sidewalk improvement of the Code Enforcement Initiative. And whereas for the proposed first sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above, the Village Board of Trustees pledges to match the funding amount requested. And whereas the resolution represents the first of the 2 identical applications for the same initiatives, and whereas the proposed first sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above exceeds project costs, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for the balance. And whereas if any CDBG funding is awarded for the proposed first sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for managing the administration of the funds. And whereas an individual application for CDBG funding is being submitted for the proposed first sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village manager to seek $200,000 in CDBG funding in order to fund the proposed first sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above. And therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees authorizes the village manager to sign and submit all required application and subsequent required materials for funding under the CDBG program for a proposed first sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Comments from the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter K, resolution authorizing the village manager of the Village of Ossining to submit second of 2 applications for community CDBG funding for a sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative. Whereas one of the 4 proposed projects identified by the Village Board of Trustees is to fund the reconstruction and repair of sidewalks, as well as to fund the payment of salaries and overhead costs directly related to enforcement of local codes in low and moderate income areas, hereinafter referred to as the second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative. And whereas for the proposed second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above, the Village Board of Trustees pledges to match the funding amount requested. And whereas the resolution represents the second of 2 identical applications for the same initiative, and whereas if the proposed second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above exceeds project costs of the Village of Ossining will be responsible for the balance. And whereas if any CDBG funding is awarded for the proposed second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for managing the administration of the funds. And whereas an individual application for CDBG funding is being submitted for proposed second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village manager to seek $200,000 in CDBG funding in order to fund the proposed second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative specified above. And therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining that the Village Board of Trustees authorizes the village manager to sign and submit all required application and subsequent required materials for funding under the CDBG program for the proposed second sidewalk improvement and code enforcement initiative. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments from the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Who's nay?
That was me. And I also nayed on the previous one.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay. Letter L, resolution authorizing the village manager of the Village of Ossining to submit applications for community development block grant funding for the Community Center Improvements Initiative. Whereas one of the 4 proposed projects identified by the Village Board of Trustees is to fund safety-focused enhancements to the Joseph G. Caputo's Community Center, hereinafter referred to as Community Center Improvement Initiative, and whereas for the proposed Community Center Improvement Initiative specified above, the Village Board of Trustees pledges to match the funding amount requested, and whereas if the proposed Community Center Improvement Initiative specified above exceeds project costs, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for the balance, and whereas if any CDBG grant funding is awarded for proposed Community Center Improvement Initiative specified above, the Village of Ossining will be responsible for managing the administration of the funds, and whereas individual application for community CDBG grant funding is being submitted for the proposed Community Center Improvement Initiative specified above. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining trustees hereby authorizes the village manager to seek $250,000 in CDBG funding in order to fund the proposed Community Center Improvement Initiative. And therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby endorses the CDBG grant application and authorizes the village manager to sign and submit all required application materials. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Continuing business of the board.
Do we have any continuing business? I don't believe we do.
I do, actually.
Oh, very good. Please.
So I'm going to put this under continuing business. I am really happy as I drive around this village to see that a few roads have been fixed, but I have to say that given that we are in June and that we have increased the amount of money in our previous budget this year for fixing and paving our roads, that I still don't see a list on our website of roads that will be fixed in what order, which was asked for a year and a half ago, months ago, a month ago, by more than just me. I looked on the website, and all that it does say, which is good, is the roads that are being worked on right now, and that's great, but it does not say what roads are being looked at, fixed, when, where, any estimates. It's really, really upsetting. I think at a meeting I said that I've already blown out 3 tires on my cars. It's becoming expensive, it's annoying, but I do have to say that driving on Camp Woods Road and watching kids get off the bus today, and watching all the gravel being, spitting up because nobody bothered to clean up after they were done from Con Ed, with nobody from the village managing that site, from the local store owners that I spoke to at Lipton's and the dry cleaners. I'm getting angry, frustrated, and I really feel that until I start screaming here or writing nasty emails or getting on social media, that I'm not being paid attention to as a representative of the public, and I'm getting more than annoyed. So to that end, let me tell you the streets that I actually think should be fixed, because apparently people in our village staff hasn't made it a priority. I'm just angry. So I've got, I don't know, like 30 streets in this village. Do you want me to read them to you? Because beginning next week, I'm going to start reading this list every single meeting till I start seeing a list on our website. What we're doing to fix, I have to tell you that seeing Briarcliff redo an entire intersection, all of Pleasantville Road, lights, extra lanes, parking lots, and everything else in less than 5 months, I got told last time I had this conversation with Paul that, we've had a lot of rain. I'm thinking that, excuse the sarcasm, the rain in Ossining is exactly the same rain as in Briarcliff. And I'm glad the sidewalks are up there, because I also took down a list of sidewalks. So I'm driving around with this thing. I did almost the entire village. It took me about an hour and a half to drive through, all over, and write down the names of streets. Certainly somebody, unlike me, who gets paid full-time, significant salaries and benefits, should find time to do the same. I can only look at you because you're the boss. So I'm just letting you know, for the public record, the beginning next week at every meeting with the trustees, bar none, until this gets addressed. I'm sure Quantel Bazemore will be joining me soon because he and I have this agreement. I'm going to start reading this, and I'm going to read it really slowly because I'm that angry with how we are not attending to basic municipal issues like roads. And I think I once told you that somebody told me that really the role of trustee isn't all the big pictures and all the stuff that so many of my colleagues talk about. It's toilets, water, and roads. So not doing it tonight, but promise you that it will be done every single time. Get it on the website, and let the citizens of this community see what roads are being looked at, when they're being done. I would have added the sidewalks, but since I see it up there, I'm going to pray that you get the money for that. This is really inexcusable from my perspective. I'd like to give you a chance to respond, but we've talked about this. I think it's fair to say that I've talked about it with you for a while now, and it's not just you, it's your staff. But I'm not here to do that right now.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks.
New business of the board.
Yes. And I did send a message to my fellow trustee, board members, as well as some of the staff that might be helpful in considering this. Thank you very much to Corporation Counsel Kahan and to Village Manager McDonald for helping me figure out if this is a possibility to even propose, and I'm pleased that it is. This is June. It is Pride Month, and I am taking this moment during June in particular to introduce consideration of a policy, not a law, but a policy, that where it's appropriate in village facilities, where we have an individual bathroom, that we use gender-neutral signage. I have to say, it's not something that I ever thought about in the past. To me, this is an example of when you know better, you do better. We had a recent screening of the documentary discussion series that talked a lot about transgender individuals and folks who identify as gender neutral, and some of the real challenges that they face when it comes to bathrooms. And I learned then that Ossining High School next year is planning to have a gender neutral bathroom in their facility. And it occurred to me that maybe village government has a role to play in this. We own a number of facilities. They're used by our employees, they're used by the public. And we all feel that being an inclusive, welcoming community is core to who we are as a village. And so I am proposing that we have a policy that when there is a bathroom that is single-person use, usually that's a family bathroom or a handicap accessible bathroom, that we use the gender-neutral signage. It's now actually law in California, so there is signage that exists. It's a pretty simple picture, a triangle and a circle. Corporation Counsel Kahan and I started considering where this would be appropriate so far, and one of the most obvious bathrooms that we all use pretty regularly is right in the lobby of Village Hall. It's like a good place to start. And we noticed tonight as we walked in, there are 2 more bathrooms right in this building that might also be appropriate. Some of our parks may also have appropriate bathrooms where it's a single-use bathroom. It's already ADA compatible. Putting the signage up is, in some way, it's a symbolic gesture. But it can be a really powerful one. Somebody in the LGBT community that says very loudly and clearly that we are a community that is welcoming to all. And so I shared the link with my colleagues so they could have a look at what this is. And If there is support on the board to move forward with this policy, then I would ask that Corporation Counsel Kahan put together what he says would be a rather simple policy for us to consider at a future meeting.
I'm in full support. It's just simple.
Thank you.
It just goes along with values.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is easy.
I'm also in full support. I would just, for the public's sake and for the record's sake, I would list, all the bathrooms that we're gonna have this, start with. So, the two possibly in the courtroom and obviously in a village hall and any other that we, identify. So yes, thank you.
Will do.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being so supportive, and thank you very much for staff for helping us make sure that we weren't running afoul of any New York State Building Code guidelines, and I'm very pleased for us to be able to move forward with this policy, demonstrating our support for everyone in our community. Madam Clerk.
Visitor recognition.
Would anyone like to speak on topics of general interest to the community for 3 minutes? Oh, looks like we have someone.
3 minutes? I thought it was 5.
Welcome.
Take my 3. I'm going to kind of piggyback in what Trustee Levitt just mentioned in regards to the streets, but I'm not going to focus on the streets. I'm actually going to focus on a particular property that I've seen several times this year and last year, the year before that, I believe the year before that as well. And it kind of changes with one email or with a conversation, I guess, from Village Management's office, talking about favorite developer right now, Hudson Steps. He did cut the grass on State Street area and parts of James Street. But if you do walk Hunter Street, what he did is, a week later that he cut the grass, the overgrown grass on State Street, he literally, I think he took all the leftovers and cut the grass or cut the bushes on the side of the street, on the side of the sidewalk on Hunter Street, literally left them on the sidewalk. So all the clip-ins, everything's on the sidewalk. There's a property next to his property, which, again, I cannot find where the sidewalk is. I know it's there, but you cannot find the sidewalk. So to me, it's an issue. To me, it's not just what are we doing in our own streets? It's how do we actually have people, residents, homeowners, developers, property owners to maintain our sidewalks, and what is that safety to our village and our community. So with that, and I'm not sure if I have anything left, but I did foil some information in regards to the same property, which was collected that last week, and it was very interesting to see that he did pull a permit, or he tried, at least I haven't seen that it was approved, but he did submit drawings for a foundation. There were several emails. I don't have it on me. I'm not going to discuss the content of those emails, but it's very disturbing to me to see that a developer like that is trying to, I want to say, pull a fast one on our community, because that reminds me a little bit to a different developer that tried to do the same thing here. So I'm not going to say who. But, so what is the board does, and what is our village manager doing in regards to this kind of situations? How do we solve this? I know this, so being told, he tried to do a pilot last year. I was pretty much denied in a way. So I'm not sure he's supposed to have a 6 months extension to his special permit that he has. I haven't seen him back. I'll be curious to see what is the outcome on this project. So just to kind of an update on what is going on.
That's as loud as it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quesada.
I just know there was a FOIL request. I know that was complied with. I know that there have been a series of, wow, we feel like congressional hearing. I know that there have been a series of tickets written for garbage and other debris on the premises, and there have been appearances with regard to those. There is, with regard to the permit, there's no recent permit issued. I can tell you that, and that's, but in terms of what's going on, status of the permits, and whether there's whether the time is running. One of the things I've asked the planning department to get to me is essentially when all those permits were issued, so that we can see exactly if, in fact, what the time is, what the sequence is in terms of that. So that's something that I have to look at, from the planning department end, and I'll be getting that information hopefully in the next day or so.
Thank you. Anyone else like to be recognized during visitor recognition this evening? Clerk?
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you very much for joining us. Next week, we will be back at Village Hall, 16 Croton Avenue, for a work session. The focus of the work session will largely be on a whole package of code enforcement-related items that have been discussed before, and we are picking them up and hoping to see if we can get many of them to the next step. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.